I never thought my life would unravel so brutally. Just 2 months into our engagement, I caught my fiancé in bed with another man. My world shattered in that single moment. But fate had a twisted plan. It brought me face to face with my childhood friend Irina, now scarred by tragedy. What followed was a journey of heartache, betrayal, and an unexpected love that changed everything. This is my story, a tale of betrayal, redemption, and the unyielding human spirit. It all began again at a frat party. It was February 2000. I was in my final year at Denison University feeling hurt and angry. I had been dating Sheila McGraw since our sophomore year. We were deeply in love, and in November I asked her to marry me. She had screamed with joy and jumped into my arms, making everyone around us clap and smile. That thing seemed perfect. Sheila was the girl of my dreams. But on the first Saturday in February, I borrowed her roommate's key to sneak into her dorm room and leave a small gift. The box said, "Do not open until Valentine's Day." I wanted her to feel excited and look forward to it. But the surprise was on me. When I opened the door, I found Sheila in bed with Brian Haverson, her lab partner in chemistry. She had told me she would be out shopping. Clearly, her plans had changed. She looked at me with shock and fear while Brian kept moving on top of her. After a moment, she screamed and Brian quickly moved away, looking just as surprised. "Sorry," I said. "Didn't mean to interrupt your shopping." I held up the small box. "This was a Valentine's Day gift for you, but I've changed my mind." Then I left, ignoring Sheila's calls behind me. That was 2 weeks ago. Since then, I spent my time either crying alone or feeling so mad I could hurt someone, the most of all. She called me many times, leaving tearful messages, but I didn't care. There was nothing she could say to make it right. She wasn't being forced. That much was clear. No matter her reasons, I couldn't marry someone who cheated just 2 months into our engagement. Now, here I was at a frat party wondering why I even came. I wasn't into frat parties, and the last time I went to one was before I met Sheila. I guess I thought maybe I could meet someone new, but I wasn't hopeful. I stood by. She seemed to be crying. I didn't know exactly what was happening, but it was clear these guys were being jerks. I stepped forward, just drunk enough to speak up, despite the odds. There were 6 of them and only one of me. "What's wrong with you guys?" I shouted. They looked at me, unimpressed. I gently took the girl's arm. "Come with me," I said softly. "Let's find a bathroom so you can wash your face." Then I got the biggest shock of my life. When she took her hands away, I saw her face. It was covered in scars, one stretching from her forehead across her right eye down to her cheek. Her nose was short and twisted. One eye seemed smaller than the other. It was clear she had been in a terrible accident. Without thinking, I gasped, "Oh my God," and stepped back, shocked. Her face showed sadness, hurt, and a bit of acceptance. She must have seen this reaction many times before, yet she looked at me closely and said, "Tommy? Tommy Lawrence?" I stood there stunned. She knew me, but I had no idea who she was. I had never seen that face before. Now, sitting close on a small couch on that dark porch, we talked and talked, catching up on the past 8 years. My story was short. Finished high school in Greenfield, had a couple of girlfriends, came to Denison, majored in electrical engineering, fell in love with Sheila, caught her cheating. In 4 months, I'd be graduating and moving to Madison, Wisconsin for a job in a software design company. Irina's story was much longer and sadder. She liked Tucson fine, though she was lonely at first. When she was 15, she and her parents had a terrible car crash on the way to Las Vegas. Her little brother Sam and both her parents died. She was badly hurt. She spent weeks in the hospital while doctors tried to heal her. When she was healthy enough to be moved, she went to stay with her aunt and uncle near Sacramento. She did a long rehab in the hospital and then at their home before she could go back to school. They were great, the doctors, patient and kind with me, and they could fix everything except this, she gestured to her face. Did they think about more surgery? I felt awkward asking, but I couldn't help myself. She laughed. "This is after surgery, Tommy." This was the best they could do. Irina the scary one, Irina the girl who frightens everyone. She shook her head. "But at least I'm alive. I have a life. Well, kind of a life. I lost a couple of years of school, so I'm only a sophomore. I wanted to study nursing, but she laughed again. Let's just say they suggested I do something else. Don't want to scare the patients." I squeezed her hand and said nothing. I couldn't imagine what Irina had been through. I went and got us more beer, and we talked late into the night. "What was going on back there?" I asked, pointing towards the frat party. "I came because I heard some jerks making fun of a girl." "Nothing I'm not used to," she said. "A guy in one of my classes asked me to come to the party with him. We've known each other for a couple of semesters, so he's used to my face now. I thought he might actually like me. Anyway, when we got here, it was clear he brought me as a joke for his friends to win some ugly girl game or something. Maybe his plan was to get me really drunk and try to take advantage of me later." "Poor Irina. You do actually have a beautiful figure, Irina, and you look fantastic in that dress." "Thank you, Tom." She touched my cheek. "You were always kind even when we were kids. I got us some more beer. I couldn't understand why I hadn't run into Irina in the past 2 years on the Denison campus. But as we talked, I realized how much she kept to herself. Who could blame her with reactions like mine? She told me about shopping late at night, wearing a cap low and pulling her hair around her face to hide her scars. I realized I had heard some rumors about a really ugly girl, though I never paid much attention to it. How could I have known it was Irina? Finally, around 3 a.m., Irina said she was tired and I offered to walk her to her apartment. "I don't live in the dorms. They couldn't find a roommate who'd live with me," she said. I stood up, feeling the effects of the beer. When I helped Irina stand, she wobbled a bit too, holding on to each other. We stumbled down the porch steps and walked away. "Will you come in for a minute, Tom? Let me show you the place," she asked as we got to her apartment. I was tired and quite drunk, but agreed. She showed me her tidy little place with a small kitchen, a living room turned study, and a single bedroom in the back. She went into the bedroom to change, and I quickly fell asleep on her couch. I woke up a few minutes later confused and in darkness. Irina was holding my hand quietly, saying, "Tom, come with me." She led me by the hand, and suddenly we were at her bed, where she gently pushed me down and took off my shoes. "Irina, what?" I began, puzzled. She had turned off all the lights, and I could barely see her. "Shh," she said, and moved away. I heard the sound of her robe, and a moment later she was snuggled up against me. "Irina?" She put her finger to my lips. "Please, Tom, stay with me. I've never been with someone like this before, and I know you'll be kind. But, Irina, are you sure this is what you want?" She took my hand and put it on her chest. I couldn't help but hold it, feeling its warmth. "Tom, I don't get many chances. Please don't say no." "I turned off all the lights so you won't have to look at me. You said my body's not bad." I felt uneasy and was a bit drunk, but I couldn't think of a good reason to say no. Irina was my best friend. She was hurting, and yes, she did have a nice body, part of which I was holding in my hand. I turned towards her and we started touching each other, slowly and gently. The complete darkness made it special as I could focus on how she felt, smelled, and the little sounds she made. We began to kiss. It was strange at first, thinking of her face, but her lips felt nice. We really got into it, just like I did with Sheila and my other past girlfriends. Irina helped me take off the rest of my clothes. When I woke up, the sun was shining through the window, lighting part of the bed. The clock said 11:38, and I was alone. I pulled on my pants and walked to the kitchen looking for Irina and thinking about aspirin. Lots of aspirin and black coffee. There was a note. "Dear Tom, I've gone to the library. I didn't want us to have an awkward moment today. You feeling sorry for taking advantage of me and me trying to tell you it was just what I wanted. It really was, and it was lovely, and you were kind. And I appreciate it so much. But I wanted you to know that there are no strings, no expectations, just a friend doing something nice for another friend. If you want to get together, let me know. But if not, that's okay too. I'll understand. Best, Irina." I headed back to my dorm room for the aspirin, grabbing some coffee in the cafeteria on the way. It felt too weird to be alone at Irina's place, and I honestly didn't know how I felt about what we did. Mostly, I felt sad. For Irina stuck in a world where people were afraid of her and ignored her. A perfectly normal, smart, and kind person stuck with a face that made sure she would always be alone. I called her a couple of days later, and we talked a bit awkwardly for about half an hour. I wanted to make sure she was okay about what happened, and she assured me she was. If she had hinted at doing it again, I would have been glad. I really enjoyed our time together, but she never mentioned it. We promised each other we'd talk again, maybe go out for a movie or something, and then we ended the call. Weeks went by, and I never got around to calling her again. It wasn't exactly guilt, maybe confusion, because she was someone I knew so well, and yet didn't know at all. and I wasn't sure I knew how to be her friend, or even if she wanted me to be her friend. In the end, I guess I was a bit scared. I didn't want to think about how it would be walking with her in public, dealing with the stares and comments with her. Besides, it was my last semester, and I had so many things to do before graduation, right? Or so I told myself. On the 11th of May, about 10 days before graduation, I got home to find a message from Irina, asking me to come over that evening if I could. I felt instantly guilty about not taking her to the movies, so I went over right after dinner. She greeted me seriously, and I did everything I could not to flinch at her face. What must it be like to see that in the mirror every morning, I wondered, and know that it's you and that you'll always look like that? Hi, Tom. Thanks for coming. Would you like some peach pie? It just came out of the oven. Baking is sort of a hobby of mine. I was going to say no, but it smelled fantastic, so I said yes, and she brought us 2 pieces along with glasses of milk. The pie was amazing, and I told her so. She smiled a little and thanked me, but then she got serious and said, Tom, I need to tell you something. I'm really sorry, but I have to apologize. I'm pregnant. I looked at her, surprised and confused. You mean it's mine? She nodded, looking sorry. After the only person I've been with, the first and only, I'm so sorry. But we used to condom, didn't we? I asked you. I know. We were drunk and I didn't have any. And to be honest, Tom, I didn't care then. I wanted to lose my virginity and didn't want to wait. I thought it was a safe time, but I was wrong. It wasn't fair to you. I know that. We sat there for a few minutes in silence. She looked a bit scared, but I wasn't mad. For some reason, I felt calm and understanding. I reached out and took her hand. What do you want to do? If you're thinking about ending the pregnancy, I'll pay for it. She shook her head. I just can't. I'm not against abortion, Tom. I think women should have the choice, but me, I can't do it. I can feel this life growing inside me, and I can't end it. What about adoption? She tried to smile, but I saw tears in her eyes. I thought about that, but I can't give my baby away. It might be the only one I ever have, and I can't stand the thought of giving it up and never having a child of my own. She cried a little, looking down at the table. Okay, then. We sat some more, thinking. I kept hearing my father's voice. He'd been dead for almost 3 years, and I missed him every day. You can tell a real man by how he acts when things get tough. Irina, I said, we need to get married. What? She replied, shocked. I can't do that to you, Tom. Burden you with me and a baby. You're just starting your life. You are too, Irina, and raising a baby alone isn't something you should be doing now. You're only halfway through school with not much money. We talked and argued for hours. By midnight, we were both tired, and I said I'd come back the next day for lunch and we'd talk more. Irina couldn't believe I was serious. Couldn't believe I'd marry her just because she was pregnant. But I thought about my dad and the values he taught me, and I knew this was right. It took 3 days, but I convinced her. We set a date for a quick wedding the day after graduation so my mom could attend. I called my mom and told her the whole story. She was shocked, worried about my future and the financial burden, but she remembered Irina and what a nice person she was. She was moved to hear about their tough situation. Thank God I had a good job lined up. I could support my new family. Irina would transfer to the University of Wisconsin and move with me in June to the apartment I rented in Madison. I spoke quietly to my mom and my friend Adam, who would be my best man about Irina's face. Nothing could fully prepare them, but at least they were able to hide their initial reactions a bit. My mom managed to kiss and hug Irina and tell her how happy she was that we were together. I was really proud of my mom. Irina's aunt and uncle couldn't afford to fly in for the wedding, but they sent a beautiful note and a check to help with moving costs. We decided not to have a honeymoon, choosing instead to save every penny for our new life in Wisconsin. We celebrated our marriage with a quiet dinner with Adam and my mom. Then Irina and I went back to the apartment, shared some champagne, just half a glass for her, and went to bed. While lying there, I thought about the big change in our lives. It was a big step, but I felt it was the right thing for us and our child. Irina and I were in this together. We had a lot of challenges ahead, but I knew we could face them. Our first night felt strange. We weren't drunk this time like we were the first time. It was different because it marked the start of our marriage. Despite my doubts, I knew it was the right thing to do. Knowing that Irina liked it too made things even better. She groaned and moved underneath me. I could feel her body react as she reached her climax. We lay together, breathing hard. I said, "Thanks, Mrs. Lawrence, that was amazing." She giggled. "You're welcome, Mr. Lawrence." After a minute, she started to cry, and I held her gently. "What's wrong, Irina?" She looked up at me, her face barely visible in the dark, tears streaming down. "This isn't what you wanted, Tom. A life with me, with this face, and you don't love me. You deserve to be with a woman you love, a woman you choose to spend your life with. I stopped her. "Sometimes life surprises you. We grew up together. You were my best friend, Irina. Do you know I've never had another friend as close as you? This was meant to be, us getting back together. It might not be the perfect love story, but here we are. You are a wonderful, brave woman, and I will try to be the kind of husband you deserve." I kissed her, smiling as she cried even more. After that, we were close again. It was sweet being together with her. Then we slept. Irina was right at first. We didn't marry because she was my dream girl, because I adored her and couldn't be without her. We married because she was having my child. And to be honest, her appearance was different. But two interesting things happened. First, I quickly got used to how Irina looked. It wasn't through any special effort, I just got accustomed to it. Her face with one odd eye and part of a nose stopped bothering me. I had a high school friend who lost his voice box after surgery. At first, his whispery voice was creepy. Then it was unusual, but not so bad. Finally, no one noticed it at all. It was just the way Julian spoke. So while I knew Irina's face scared others, it became normal for me. I could look at her while we talked without being bothered. The other thing that happened more slowly was that I fell in love with her. Irina was a big part of my childhood, my best friend. The person I did everything with and told every secret to. Even when she moved away at 14, we had built a lot of trust. Watching her face a world that feared her, seeing her bravery and kindness every day, living with her constant sweetness and optimism. I really did begin to love her. I began to feel she was the one I wanted to spend my life with. I didn't notice these feelings at first because I assumed we would stay together since we were having a baby. We never really talked about it, but that was just what we did. All summer while moving to Madison, setting up our new home, me starting my job and Irina starting classes at Wisconsin, we grew closer. Our relationship deepened. Our intimate life changed too. Irina was always willing when I wanted to be close. But sometimes it seemed like she did it out of duty or because that's what a good wife does. I don't mean she was boring. She wasn't. She always seemed to enjoy it, and sometimes she got very excited. Those times were the most fun. But after a month or two, Irina began to take the lead sometimes. She'd come home with a magazine and ask if we could try something new she read about. New positions or long massages. I loved this mainly because having a partner who desires you is wonderful. And I'm sure our happy, intimate life was due to the trust we had built over the years. In Saturday morning, I brought 2 cups of coffee to bed, and we played, kissing and touching each other. Then I rolled her onto her hands and knees and entered her. We both liked this. I think Irina liked it because she still felt self-conscious about her face, even though it didn't bother me anymore. She felt more relaxed when I couldn't see her face. Plus, by August, she was 6 months pregnant, and this position was comfortable for her. Usually in this position, she would hold still, letting me move. This time I went slowly, stopping to make her do more of the work by moving herself back onto me. I started to tease her, making her reach back more and more. Her breathing quickened. Tommy stopped teasing me, but I kept doing it, making her keep reaching back. Her body began to shake and she started making soft noises. She reached out for me and I couldn't hold back. I pushed forward with force and she cried out in pleasure. I moved back and forth a few more times until we both found release. We collapsed next to each other, breathing heavily, but happy. She kissed me warmly and said, "You tease. What a naughty boy you are." In Madison, I made sure to go shopping with her as much as possible. We always went together to buy furniture, and we did our grocery shopping together, or I did it alone. It seemed to help her cope with the stares and whispers when I was by her side. I imagine she thought, so what if my face is different? I have someone who loves me. Yet I also wondered if she felt this only happened because we had a baby on the way. I tried to make things easier for her by preparing people before they met her. For example, the day before she had an appointment with a new doctor, I went to the office and talked to the nurses. I showed them a picture of Irina and explained that she had been disfigured in an accident. This helped the staff be more kind and prepared when they met her. Nancy, the head nurse, understood and even showed the picture to the doctor to make him ready for Irina. When we arrived the next day, everyone was kind and treated her well, thanks to my visit. In early July, I also visited a call center where Irina had applied for a job. We agreed that with the baby due in October, it wasn't worth starting school, so she looked for a job instead. A call center was ideal since she wouldn't have to be seen by customers. I spoke with the supervisor, showed her the picture, and explained the situation. Irina returned home happy the next night because she got the job. It was also convenient for us, as I could drop her off at work on my way to my office. This meant we could manage with just one car, an old Toyota, and she didn't have to take the bus. My own job was going well, and I felt my bosses liked and valued me. I was feeling happy and unaware of any coming troubles. One moment stands out, a Thursday after Labor Day. I went to get mint chocolate chip ice cream for Irina, who had a craving. When I returned, I found her on the floor having a seizure. Her eyes rolled back, and she had lost control of her bladder. Panicked, I called 911 and tried to keep her safe until help arrived. We were soon in an ambulance heading to the hospital. Irina had stopped seizing but was now unconscious. I was incredibly scared. To make a long story short, we lost the baby, and I almost lost Irina. She had a severe case of eclampsia, which is related to high blood pressure during pregnancy. Usually there are warning signs, but this time there were none. Irina's seizure was so severe that the doctors feared for her life right in the emergency room. The usual method is to help the mother first, then deliver the baby with a C-section. But in this case, it took so long to help Irina that the baby did not survive. It was a little boy, and he died before they could get him out. The doctors, nurses, and grief counselor at the hospital were very kind. They suggested we name our baby boy. We called him Walter Ivan Lawrence, after my father and her mother's father. They also suggested having a funeral service for him. We were able to donate some of his organs to other sick newborns, which gave us a small bit of comfort. People at our jobs were also supportive and sympathetic, but nothing could make it any less terrible. I was heartbroken and sad. Irina was even more so. When she first told me she was pregnant, she said this would be her only child. She meant that no one would marry her or have another child with her. Sadly, she turned out to be right for a different reason. The rushed attempt to save our baby left her unable to have any more children. For weeks, we stumbled through our days. Irina's aunt flew in and stayed at a nearby hotel for a couple of weeks to help Irina, treating her and offering her comfort. After 10 days, I went back to work, but I felt like a zombie. People said we needed time. Only time would help us heal and move past the grief. They were right, but it felt like it was taking forever. Irina needed about 4 weeks at home after 5 days in the hospital before she was strong enough to go back to work. That was a turning point. It gave us both some routine, something to keep us from thinking too much. Surprisingly, we took care of each other. The grief counselor warned me that such a loss can sometimes break a couple apart. She told me to watch for signs like if one of us became withdrawn and moody and didn't get better. But Irina and I made it through. So we decided to spend Thanksgiving with my mother in Greenfield and then have a long weekend at a small resort on Lake Michigan before going back to work. The trip was relaxing and romantic. We walked along the shore in the cold wind, then went back inside to be close and spend time together. But I noticed that Irina seemed affectionate yet distracted. Something was on her mind. On Sunday morning, she finally spoke to me about it. We had been together in the morning, had brunch, and then went back to our room. To my surprise, Irina wanted to be close again. She settled me on the bed and was very loving. Then she pulled me on top of her and held me close. Afterwards, as we lay together, I remembered we needed to pack up and drive back to Madison, and then sat up and said, "Tom, we need to talk." I could tell this was important. Her face was serious, not scared or angry, but very serious. "When you asked me to marry you," she said, "it was to give our baby a family, a father, and a mother. We both knew it wasn't for love or because we chose each other as life partners, and you've been a wonderful husband. So kind, so supportive and understanding, so great during the pregnancy. But we lost our baby and we're never going to have another, so I suddenly realized what she was saying and felt shocked. Wait, Irina, But she stopped me with a sad smile and continued. "The reason you married me is gone, Tom. I want you to have the life you want with someone you love when you meet her. It's time for us to talk about a divorce." There was a long silence. I knew what I wanted. It was very clear to me, but I didn't know how to say it. I asked carefully, "Is a divorce what you want, Irina? Or is it something you feel you need to offer me?" She looked away. "It's hard for me to know what I really want, Tom. For years, I accepted that no man would ever fall in love with me or want to marry me. I still fantasized about it, but I knew it wouldn't happen. You've been my husband and my friend, and I'm so glad we found each other again, but I know your idea of happiness isn't spending your life with someone who looks like this." She pointed to her face. "Irina," I said slowly, making sure she looked at me. "I never thought we'd be here. Yes, I married you because you were having my child, not because I loved you. But you were also my best friend, so it was an easy choice. I knew you were a great person, a good friend, and you'd be a wonderful mother. And you forgot a couple of things. First, scars or no scars, you are the most beautiful woman I have ever seen, and I love being with you." She smiled a little, almost against her will, and I continued. "And second," I paused for a moment. "I love you." She smiled again, this time almost sympathetically. "You're a nice man, Tommy, and I know you care for me. We've been through a lot together. I know the physical part is good, too. We both enjoy it. But you don't love me in the way a man loves the woman he wants to spend his life with." I leaned back against the pillows, feeling stuck. That was the problem. I loved Irina. I did want to spend my life with her, but she didn't believe me, and I wondered if I could ever change her mind. We talked for another hour, getting nowhere. She wanted to stay in Madison. She liked her job in the city. She had no family left in Greenfield and didn't want to be in Sacramento with her aunt and uncle. But she wanted us to divorce, hoping I'd move on and find someone else. I couldn't make her see that I loved her no matter how she looked, and that I wanted to wake up next to her every morning. We drove back to Madison, went back to work, and lived our lives. Almost every day, Irina would bring up the divorce, calmly, without anger, and every day I tried and failed to convince her that I wanted to be with her. She printed pages from a website about how easy it was to get a no-contest divorce in Wisconsin without kids, just a few months and a few $100s, she said, and I could start a new life. "Maybe you won't get married right away. Maybe you'll enjoy being a single guy with a good job. Maybe you'll spend a few years dating every cute girl you meet." I laughed and said, "But what good will that be if I can't be with the one girl I really want to be with?" Smiling, she replied, "You'll have me for a few more months. It should be plenty, and nothing I said or did would change her mind." A few days later, I tried a different approach. I interrupted another talk about easy divorce and asked, "Irina, do you love me?" She was taken aback. "It doesn't matter," she said. "Of course it matters. It's the only thing that does matter because I love you. I want to know if you love me, if you would be happy to stay with me, or if you want to be single again to find another man to love." "Tommy," she said, "I'm not going to do that unless they start having dances for people with bags over their heads. You haven't answered my question. Do you love me?" There was a long silence as she looked out the window. Finally, she said, "Yes, Tom, I do, but it doesn't matter." Weeks went by and I didn't know how to change her mind. How can you prove to someone that you love them? I did everything I could think of. I was a kind, supportive husband. I sent her flowers and I constantly showed her affection in different ways. But Irina stayed a good partner and friend and still didn't believe me. At the end of January 2001, I made a reservation at the best French restaurant in Madison, asking for a private table. I also got an advance from my boss and bought a diamond engagement ring much bigger than the one I had bought the year before. We dressed up and went out to dinner. We had champagne, wine, great food, and a wonderful time. As we sat over coffee, I took both her hands. "Listen, Irina," I said. "You found out how quickly we could get a no-contest divorce. Well, I found out something too. A contested divorce takes a lot longer. I can hold on to you for months, years even, unless you're willing to spend a lot of money." "So," I continued smiling, "why not just give up the idea? Let's save the time and the money." I moved around the table and kneeled in front of her, enjoying the shocked look on her face. I pulled out the small box and opened it, showing her the beautiful ring. "Irina, would you do me the honor of staying my wife?" There was a long, long silence. Irina looked at the ring, then at my hopeful face. I wasn't worried. I knew that no matter what she said, I wasn't going to give up. Finally, something changed in her eyes. Irina started to cry and said, "Oh, Tommy." She pulled me into her arms. As I held her and she cried on my shoulder, she whispered, "Yes, yes, I'll stay with you, Tommy." When she wiped her eyes, we had the fun of taking off her old engagement ring and putting on the new one. We admired it together and even showed it to the waiter when he brought us the check. On the drive home, we didn't say a word. Irina held my hand tightly the whole way. When we got into the apartment, she pushed me against the door and kissed me hard. She said, "Go use the bathroom quick and then wait for me in bed." That night was intense. We had passionate nights before, but that night she had a lot of energy. After she came out of the bathroom, she left a lamp on so I could see her body. She was excited and eager, and we spent almost 2 hours making love. After the first time, she ran to the bathroom to clean up. Then she came back and sat on my chest, smiling. She moved up and whispered, "Do me, baby, please." I loved pleasuring Irina, though she didn't often ask for it. It was a big turn-on for her to take the lead, and I went down on her until she was moving and grinding herself on me so much that it was hard to breathe. As soon as she finished and relaxed a little, I rolled her over and we made love again. That was number 2. The third time after she woke me up with her lips, I was so tired that I just lay back and let her take charge. I enjoyed watching her beautiful body move above me. The next morning when I woke up, she was lying behind me, gently kissing my ear and touching me. We made love again before I begged for a break and breakfast. That Friday night felt like our real wedding night. We gave ourselves to each other completely with love. It was the first true night of our marriage. After that night, everything good between us got better. Irina became more comfortable with the idea that I truly loved her. I wasn't with her out of pity, duty, or habit. I loved and wanted her, which was true, and loved having her with me. Our friendship, already strong, grew stronger. The romantic side of our relationship also became more intense. We treated each other like lovers, both in and out of bed. We started doing all the romantic things people do at the beginning of a relationship, romantic walks. Long, intense makeout sessions, deep talks about hopes and dreams for the future. Our trust in each other grew deeper, and I have to say the intimacy was fantastic. Knowing how much I desired her made Irina more confident in her looks. She had always been self-conscious about her face, but now, at least with Mace, felt more beautiful. She would flaunt her looks, tease me with lingerie or low-cut tops, be demanding when she felt like it, whisper sweet things in my ear, and enjoy our connection fully. I felt like the luckiest man on earth, and things just kept getting better. For a while, Irina sat sobbing, her face buried in her hands. Sitting across the room, I just stared at her, stunned, to feel the anger and grief I knew would come. I was vaguely aware of tears on my cheeks as I looked out the window at the beautiful sunset over the Pacific. It was a spectacular sunset that couldn't have meant any less to me at that moment. She lifted her head and I saw her face, that beautiful face of the woman I had known since we were kids and had loved deeply for the past 8 years. She was saying, I'm so sorry," in a choked voice so that I could hardly hear her. Suddenly, I couldn't stand to be there. I literally couldn't bear it. I got up and headed for the door, hearing her cry out behind me, "No, Tommy, please don't go." The Porsche was still right in front of the house, and I sped down the driveway to the canyon road, then tore down the road at a dangerous speed. I didn't know where I was heading, and then I remembered the cliff. Our favorite spot in Malibu in all of California. I got there in less than 15 minutes. I parked the car and walked up the dirt path through the low brush until I reached the spot. I was on the edge of the American continent, maybe 250 feet up, looking out over a cliff that hung over the Pacific Ocean. Irina and I had once joked in one of our happy moments that this would be the perfect spot to end it all, with a picturesque jump to the rocky shore below. We could laugh about it then, I thought, when we were both so content that the idea of ending it all was just a joke. Now it didn't seem so funny. I knew I wouldn't jump, though. I couldn't do that to the twins. If not for Earl and Lily, I knew I would have to get back in the car, drive up the hill, and face the mess my life had turned into. I sat there for at least 2 hours, watching the Pacific as the sunset turned to night. How did I end up here? How did things get so bad for Irina and me? Nothing happens for just one reason. Many things come together to cause big events, whether they're good or bad. For almost 7 years, Irina and I were happy in Madison. My job was good, and later on it became amazing. But even before that, I was earning enough money to buy us a small house in a nice part of town, south of the Arboretum. About a year after we lost our baby, Irina went back to school to study accounting. It was hard for her at first because of her face, just like it had been at Denison. But this time, she had a husband to come home to. She did very well in school and graduated in 2 years with high honors in May 2003. She had job offers from 3 good companies in Madison. When something big happened, Irina was part of a small Russian Orthodox church in Madison and had made friends there. Her interest was more cultural than religious. Russian art and language were a part of her life before her mother died, and she wanted to stay connected to that. I went with her sometimes, but usually she went alone. About a week after her graduation, Irina came home from church with a strange look in her eye. She was excited but serious at the same time. She made a nice lunch, then took my hand and led me to the bedroom for some quiet time together. Once we were relaxed, she finally told me what was on her mind. "Tommy, can we talk about something important?" "Of course," I said. It turned out that the 17-year-old daughter of Irina's friends from the church, the Lemon Toffs, was pregnant with twins. Tatiana was a smart girl who had taken some college courses and had an affair with her married history professor. She had not told her parents until the 4th month of her pregnancy, so it was too late for an abortion. They planned to give the children up for adoption. "Do you think we could consider taking them?" Irina asked, looking hopeful and worried. We had talked about adopting after our baby died, but now, almost 3 years later, we hadn't brought it up again. How did I feel about it? I felt excited. I loved Irina and our life, but the idea of having children and a real family seemed amazing. "I don't know," I said, trying to stay serious. "I've heard that many mothers ignore their husbands when they have children. You might move me to the guest room or stop cooking for me. I'm not sure I want to take that risk." She looked like she was getting angry until she saw my smile. Then she laughed. "You stinker?" For a moment, I thought you were serious. Then she paused and looked into my eyes. "You really want to do this, Tommy? I would love to have children with you, and the thought that they'd be part Russian is wonderful. They'll probably be smart, even if their father was not a good person. I think we should do it. How much?" Before I could finish, Irina kissed me joyfully. We ended up spending more time together that afternoon without saying anything else. Earl Lemontoff Lawrence and Lily Tatiana Lawrence were born on August 22nd and became part of our family that day. It was hard for Tatiana to give up the children, but she knew we would be loving parents and that she could visit any time. For about a year, Tatiana visited them at least once a month. Later, she went to Duke University and we didn't hear from her much. Irina decided to delay taking an accounting job for at least a year because she wanted to be a full-time mom. Anyone who has had babies can imagine the chaos of those first few months, as well as the joy. Our babies were beautiful and smart, and we loved watching them grow. They seemed to have a special bond, as many twins do. We were sleep-deprived but very happy. In my software design job, I worked with a guy named Rick Torgerson. He was a year older and a recent graduate of Wisconsin. We quickly realized we made a great team. He was full of creative ideas, but often impractical, while I was more down to earth. Together, we came up with practical solutions to his creative ideas. In a few months, we were the stars of our department. Even more than that, we enjoyed each other's company and liked working together. I had introduced Rick and his girlfriend Lisa to Irina after quietly explaining about her face, and the 4 of us often got together on weekends for dinner or movies. One Saturday afternoon in June 2004, when the twins were about 10 months old, the women were playing with the babies while Rick and I chatted about work. We were talking about search algorithms our firm was working on and how they compared to Google's. Suddenly, we both realized something at the same time. "It's a flaw, isn't it?" Rick said, and I nodded. Yes, I was thinking the same. Their way of combining searches isn't as good as it could be. We might be able to do better. We spent over an hour at my dining room table, drawing and talking excitedly. We forgot about dinner while Lisa and Irina laughed at us and ate with the twins in the kitchen. Rick and I got together the next day for several more hours. By the end of the afternoon, we thought we had something promising. We had a long discussion about whether to tell our supervisor at work or to keep it private and work on it ourselves during our free time. I said that the idea first came from work we'd done at the company, so we needed to make a deal with them. After some discussion, he agreed. At the end of that week, we met with Roger Handler, our project supervisor, to work out an agreement. We shared the basics of our idea and suggested we'd share 20% of profits with the company, but we would file for patents and control the rest. It took 5 more meetings, including 2 with lawyers for us and the company, but we got a deal. We agreed to give the company 25% and to let them be the first to buy or license the software. They also agreed that Rick and I could use 50% of our work time on the project, but we had to spend the rest on our other duties. After 8 months, we had our first patent in process, and after 21 months, our improved search algorithm, protected by 4 patents, was auctioned off. Not surprisingly, Google bought it. They didn't want any new company with a faster search engine competing with them. I will never forget the day when I first knew that the deal, or something like it, was going to happen. It was 3-4 months before the actual sale, but Rick and I could see that what we'd created was going to make us a lot of money. I came home with flowers, a bottle of champagne, and some strawberries, and said, "Let's get the twins to bed. We need to celebrate tonight." We ate a quick dinner, bathed the twins, and put them to bed by 8:30. Then I brought the champagne and strawberries to bed. Proposing the first toast, I said, "Here's to my amazing wife, Irina, who was about to be very rich." We had been talking regularly about my work, and Irina knew it was going well, but this was the first time I was sure we were going to make a lot of money. "How rich?" she teased. "Rich enough that I should stay with you? Rich enough that you're worth sharing my life with?" "I hope so," I said. "How does, say, $15 million sound?" She just looked at me, surprised. "Oh my God, Tom, really?" I smiled and nodded. For a moment she poured the entire glass of champagne down her throat. Then, with sparkling eyes, she said, "Okay, for $15 million, I'll be very happy." I laughed and hugged her. We were both extremely excited. As we celebrated, we kept whispering, "We're rich," or $15 million to each other, and giggling. When we were done, lying together in bed, Irina stroking my chest, she said, "This is really going to happen? $15 million? It could be a lot more, but yeah, probably within 2 more months." She nodded, looking serious. "Well, I haven't seen any money yet, but I'll stay with my $15 million husband." We laughed again, hugged, and felt very close. When the deal was finally concluded in March 2006, it was incredibly complicated, but it included an upfront payment of $120 million, plus yearly royalties based on the number of searches performed each year on Google's site. After the shares for the company and the lawyers were deducted, Rick and I each received $34 million. In addition, our royalties were likely to be $10, $12 million a year each for the life of our algorithm until someone came up with a better one. That could be in 1 year or in 5. Either way, we were unbelievably rich. In March 2006, at the age of 28, Irina and I had more money than we ever dreamed of. Needless to say, our lives were about to change in ways we couldn't even imagine. A week after the deal was signed, Rick and I hired a stretch limo and took our wives, Rick and Lisa were now married, and had a 1-year-old boy named Jake, to the fanciest restaurant in Madison. We drank too much, had a wonderful meal, and kept toasting each other. As Irina and I found our way to bed that night, we agreed that having good friends to share our joy with was one of the best parts of being happy. There were many decisions to make, but really just 2 big ones. Where did we want to live and raise our children? And did I want to keep working? It wasn't because we needed the money anymore. We had been talking about what to do for weeks, ever since we found out we were going to be very rich. It's harder than you think to decide what you want when you can afford anything. Should we buy a yacht and travel the world, build houses in France, Italy, or South Africa? Buy a penthouse in New York? The possibilities were endless. In the end, we decided to move to California. We both disliked Wisconsin's weather and liked the idea of living near the ocean. California also made sense for my future in the software business. That brings me to my second decision. I planned to take a year off, but hoped to go back to work afterward. I loved my job and couldn't imagine staying home forever, no matter how much I loved my wife and kids. I wanted Irina to come with me to California to look for houses. But she was hesitant at first. She didn't like the idea of meeting lots of new people. With our new wealth, however, we found a way to make it comfortable for her. By that time, Elaine had been our nanny for almost a year, and she adored the kids. We felt okay leaving them with her for a few days. I rented a private plane to take us around California and found an excellent real estate agent in L.A. named Angela Simon. She dedicated a whole week to showing us around. Once Irina knew she wouldn't have to meet many people, she agreed to the trip. We had a fantastic time. Angela showed us amazing houses from San Diego all the way up to the Oregon border. The houses we liked best had stunning views of the ocean and plenty of privacy. We finally chose a big, modern 4-bedroom house on a private road in a Malibu canyon north of Los Angeles. It was quite a neighborhood. Johnny Carson used to live nearby. The property also had a guest house for our nanny and a great private school for the twins just 10 minutes away. Johnny wasn't an issue, so we bought the house right away, although we weren't ready to move yet. Then I sat down with Irina to discuss another plan I'd had for a long time. I'd gotten used to Irina's scars and her nose, eye, and everything else, but I knew how much it hurt her and affected her life. By the end of 2005, when we knew we'd soon be very rich, I started looking into plastic surgeons. I talked to the best doctor in Madison, bringing him photos of Irina. He said he could help, but mentioned that the best specialists were in Europe. That's where he'd go if he had the money. I contacted a few people he recommended, and in the end I had the names of 3 top surgeons, 2 in London and 1 in Geneva. I sent them Irina's photos and asked for their opinions. The best response came from Dr. Ingrid Molhausen in Geneva. I did some research on Dr. Molhausen. Everyone said she was the best. So in April 2006, after we'd gotten used to the idea of being rich, I talked to Irina about it while we were at one of our favorite spots near Lake Wingra. "Honey, I want to ask you something. I hope it doesn't sound silly." She looked curious, and I said, "If there was a way to make your face look more normal, would you want that?" "Normal?" she snapped. "You mean to make me look less like a freak?" She walked away quickly, surprised. I let her go. I knew this was a sensitive subject, but thought we could talk about it. After about 20 minutes, she came back looking serious but calm. "I'm sorry, Tom," she said. "I overreacted. It's okay, honey. I know it hurts you every day. I never want to make it worse." She smiled and kissed my cheek. "I know, and I'm sorry." "Why did you ask?" Carefully, I said. "I wanted to know if you'd want to do something about it, if you could. I mean, if there were improvements in surgery or something. Have you been looking into this, Tom?" I nodded, and she sat on my lap, crying on my shoulder. I held her until she was calm, then wiped her tears with a tissue. "You're more than I deserve, you know that?" I shook my head. "No, Irina, you've got it wrong. On my best days, I only hope I'm good enough for you." We kissed for a long time, holding each other. Then she said, "Okay, spill. What have you been up to?" I told her about my research, the doctor in Madison, and everything I learned about Dr. Molhausen. "I hope you don't think I was overstepping, Irina, and I love you just the way you are. If this idea upsets you, I'll stop." "No, honey," she said quietly. "I think I might want to do it. Just give me a little time, okay? I've gotten so used to thinking that I will always have this face. I just need some time to get used to the idea that I might not have to look this way." We stood up and walked for a while, holding hands. We didn't say anything else. 10 days later, we flew to Geneva for a meeting with Dr. Ingrid Molhausen. We liked her a lot. She examined Irina thoroughly and took lots of photos and measurements. This took several hours. The next day, we met with her in her office. "I can help you a lot," she said. "There is one scar on your cheek that will always show a little, especially if someone looks closely, like from less than a foot away. But I can fix your eye so it looks normal and rebuild your nose. The other scars won't be a problem. The good news is, I can help you. The bad news is, this will take a long time. You will need at least 3 surgeries, maybe 4. We will need some skin from your thigh. This will be painful, but we can give you medicine for that. It would take about 7 months if you can move to Geneva. If you can't, you can travel back and forth, but it might take up to a year. Oh, and I need all the pictures you can find of Irina before the accident. They will help me in recreating her face. Do you have any questions?" We stayed in Geneva for 2 more days. We met with Dr. Molhausen and talked to each other. In the end, we decided to move to Geneva. The kids were still in nursery school, and there was a great international school there. For Nanny, Elaine was happy about living in Europe for a few months. She had even wanted to move to California when we did. So in August 2006, the Lawrence family, plus Elaine, moved into a big apartment in a nice part of Geneva overlooking the lake, and Irina started her treatment. The surgeries went well, but Irina's pain was hard to see. She was very brave and only asked for more pain medicine now and then. Sometimes we had to keep the children away to avoid infections, which made her miss them a lot. During the first stages of the treatment, her face sometimes looked as bad as it did before we started. By early March 2007, Dr. Mulhausen was happy with the results and said we could return to the U.S. She had done something amazing. Irina didn't just look normal, whatever that means, she was stunning. She had a great figure before, and now her face was that of a European supermodel. She was still Irina, the pretty girl I knew back in Indiana, but now she was a total knockout. I was thrilled and very happy for my wife, but Irina was shocked. She couldn't stop looking at herself in the mirror, turning this way and that, trying to believe the change. When we walked through Geneva, she was confused by the attention she got. She was used to avoiding people's shocked stares. Now she saw people admiring her, smiling and even whistling. Well-dressed women looked at her with envy. We would come back to the apartment and she'd be almost in shock from the reactions. "I can't believe it, Tom," she said over and over. After so many years, I insisted that we stay another 2 weeks in Geneva and go out every day, either for a walk to a restaurant or the theater, so Irina could get used to the way people reacted to her beauty. We also talked about how she should be ready for our friends and family back in Wisconsin. The first people we saw when we got back home were Rick and Lisa Torgerson. When they saw Irina, their jaws dropped. There was a stunned silence, and then Lisa ran to hug Irina. "Oh my God, you're so beautiful," she cried, and Rick quickly agreed. My eyes filled with tears seeing how happy Lisa and Rick were for Irina, and seeing Irina's joy at their reaction. It was a very special moment for all of us. In June 2007, we said goodbye to our friends in Madison and moved to our new place in Malibu. Rick and Lisa, who now had enough money to live anywhere, chose to stay in Madison. They had both grown up in Wisconsin and wanted to be near their families. Rick was starting a new software company and enjoyed working with his new team. We promised to visit each other often. I arranged for our realtor, Angela Simon, to meet us at the house when we arrived in Malibu. She was amazed by Irina's beauty and kept saying she couldn't wait to introduce us to people. That's exactly what I wanted. Angela had good connections with the wealthy crowd in L.A., and I thought she would be a good friend to have. I was not exactly unknown, of course. After our work sold to Google, Rick and I had become somewhat famous in the tech world. Our faces had been in Newsweek and on the covers of several computer industry magazines. There was even a short article about us in the Wall Street Journal called "The Young Lions: A Threat to Google." It made us sound much smarter than we really were. But Irina had refused to be in any photos. All this attention had happened before her surgeries. Now she was really excited to go out and meet people, especially the fancy ones Angela knew. But she was also very scared. "How will I talk to those people?" she asked me again and again. "I don't know anything about movies or fashion or computer programs," she added, laughing a little. I hugged her and said, "You are the nicest, most level-headed person I know. Plus, you are very beautiful. You will have these people amazed in no time, especially the man." She giggled, looking happy. I added, "Just promise me you won't let any of these movie star types lead you away, okay?" To my surprise, Irina turned very serious right away. She looked at me closely and said, "No, Tom, never. There is no way I could—" She paused, still looking at me, and she hugged me tightly. With her mouth near my ear, she whispered, "You and the kids are my life, my everything. I would never risk that." She pulled back a bit to look into my eyes and said, "You believe me, don't you?" "Of course, baby," I said, smiling at her. Then I added, "But you know, we have an hour or so until Elaine comes back with the twins. Do you think that's enough time for you to comfort me a little?" Sighing, never taking her eyes off me, she bent down and took off her sneakers, then her jeans and t-shirt. We'd been sorting through boxes in the living room. She led me to the couch and whispered, "Right here." We kissed passionately while she helped me get my clothes off. She looked excited and happy. We lay together for a bit, catching our breath. "We need to get dressed," I said, as we heard the sound of Elaine's car returning. Coming up, we grinded each other as we quickly put our clothes back on. It was our third week in California when Angela had a poolside party at her place to introduce us around. I can't begin to tell you what an impression Irina made. The crowd was a mix: movie people, some finance and business folks Angela knew, and a few people from the news. We saw more than a dozen faces we recognized from movies or TV: Benjamin Bratt and Hathaway, Larry David, and others. Irina was thrilled and scared at the same time. She stuck very close to me, holding my arm tightly as we walked around with drinks in hand. "I can't believe we're here with these people," she whispered to me several times. Angela came up to us and Irina almost fell over when she saw the couple behind her. "Irina, Tom, welcome. I'm so glad you could make it. Let me introduce you to two dear friends. Catherine, Michael, this is Tom and Irina Lawrence. Tom is that software genius you've read about in the papers. They've just moved into a marvelous house up in the canyon." Irina's hands squeezed my arm tightly. We were looking into the smiling faces of Michael Douglas and Catherine Zeta-Jones, shaking their hands and hearing them say how nice it was to meet us. We stood chatting pleasantly for a few minutes. Catherine was even more beautiful in person than in the movies. I managed to make conversation about where we were living, how we liked LA so far, and so on, and I couldn't help noticing Michael. Even with his famous wife next to him, he was very drawn to Irina. After a few minutes, they went to get a drink. Irina said, "Oh my God, Tom, I can barely stand up. My knees are shaking. Did that really happen?" As we walked around, I said, "Did you notice the way he looked at you?" "Oh, don't be silly, honey. He was just being polite. I'm telling you, Irina, he thought you were stunning. He was looking at you like there was no other woman here." She blushed and told me I was silly. But as we walked around, the same thing kept happening. We met a news anchor from the KNBC station in LA, a producer for Searchlight Pictures, a beautiful woman from a movie with Robert Redford some years ago, and a couple of big names in California banking. All of them, especially the men, seemed very interested in Irina. She was asked several times if she was a model or an actress. Her humble denials were met with suggestions that she should try it since she had the looks for it, making her blush even more. One middle-aged, heavy-set guy who said he was a top talent manager gave Irina his business card. "I'm telling you, young lady," he said in a gruff voice, "I could make you a lot of money. You could be famous in 3 months. He looked at her deeply as though trying to convince her with his eyes before nodding to me and walking away. On the way home from the party, after we thanked Angela and said goodbye to some of our new friends, Irina was in a daze. She was not used to the kind of attention she was getting, especially from people she never thought she'd meet. When I stopped the car in our driveway, she put a hand on my arm and asked, "Tom, please tell me the truth. Am I really that beautiful?" I smiled and said, "Yes, you are that beautiful. There wasn't a woman at the party prettier than you. You could tell from all the attention you got." I walked towards our door, but turned around to see Irina standing by the car, looking out to the ocean. "I'm just not sure if I'm ready for this, you know? I spent 15 years thinking of myself as ugly, hiding my face from everyone except you. And now I'm supposed to see myself as beautiful?" She started to cry a little. How am I supposed to handle that? We went inside and talked for a long time. We talked about her beauty, about LA, and about what we wanted our lives to be like now that we had money and freedom. We agreed to take things slow. No need to rush into the social scene. No need to pretend to be someone we're not. "Honey, we're just a couple of Midwestern kids who got really lucky. We're not in the movies. We didn't grow up living the glamorous life. Let's just be ourselves. We'll find friends here who like us just the way we are. We're not in the movies. 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 With our new wealth, she didn't need to work, and she decided to wait until the twins started elementary school before thinking about what she wanted to do. I worked in the software business for a few months, doing short consulting jobs for different companies in California. Irina and the kids got used to me being out of town once or twice a month, usually flying up to Silicon Valley and coming back in a day or two. Following suggestions from Angela and Ted Friedman, our LA financial manager, I bought a timeshare on a small private company. I didn't want the trouble of owning a plane, but the timeshare meant I could have one available at LAX whenever I needed it, with a pilot and crew. We didn't need to deal with security and long lines of flying on commercial flights. Irina and I also hired Jason Davidson to be our full-time driver. We got a royal blue Escalade that Irina picked out. Jason was a relaxed guy in his late 40s who came highly recommended by many celebrities he had worked for over nearly 20 years. He was there when we needed him, whether it was to take me to the airport, take Irina shopping downtown, or drive the whole family to Palm Springs for the weekend. Jason knew every street and highway in LA, it seemed, and he knew a lot of celebrities too. He would entertain us with funny stories about Ed McMahon, George Clooney, or Steven Spielberg. Irina was always impressed that he had met these famous people. In January 2008, when we had been in LA for about 6 months, Rick Torgerson flew in and stayed with us for a couple of days. As we sat on the deck talking after dinner, he got to the point. "Please let me finish before you say no way, okay, Tom? TSS is not doing as well as I hoped, and I think I know why." Torgerson Software Systems was the name of Rick's startup company in Madison, where we both worked before. "The guys I've hired are smart and eager, but there's nobody I can really work with. They're all scared of me, and none of them have the practical way of solving problems that I always relied on you for. Also, raising the money we need has been harder than I thought, so aside from wanting to see you, Irina, and the twins, here's why I'm here. I want you to join the business and be my co-partner." He saw the look on my face and said, "Whoa, hold on. I'm not saying you have to move back to Wisconsin. I'm thinking of a mostly long-distance partnership. You know how much we can get done by email and video calls. I figure 1 or 2 trips a month would be enough for a couple of days each time, and some of those could be me coming out here." I was unsure at first, but the more we talked, the more it made sense. I had never had a better work relationship than with Rick. Our strengths and weaknesses fit together perfectly, and we had completed many successful projects, not just the big one we sold to Google. Rick stayed another day and a half talking with me and Irina, whom I insisted join the conversation. By the time he left, we had agreed in principle on a new company, TLI, Torgerson Lawrence Incorporated, which would take over Rick's existing firm. It would be based in Madison, but we'd be equal partners. Him as the inside managing director, and me the outside director. I went to California to raise money for our new project. Both Rick and I were sure our names would help make this easy. We agreed that I only had to visit Madison for 3 days each month, unless it was urgent or we had a deadline. Most of our work would be done remotely, or Rick would come to California. We left the details to the lawyers. 6 weeks later, I had a new job, which made me very happy. I was starting to get bored in Malibu. Working with Rick again felt exciting and satisfying. I turned the lower floor of our house into an office, so my commute was just a short walk downstairs. I could also have lunch with my wife, Irina, and the kids every day, or take a nap with her whenever we wanted. Our social life was amazing. After attending Angela's party, we got invited to many more. Over the first few months, we went to about 20 parties and met a lot of wealthy and stylish people in LA. Irina asked Angela to help her find dresses for these events. She quickly got used to shopping at fancy stores in Beverly Hills. It helped that we were rich, and even more that Irina looked beautiful in everything she wore. Her looks made a big impression. We made many friends. Some of our closest friends were parents of kids that our children, Earl and Lily, knew from nursery school. Another family from Indiana had recently moved to LA and bought a house with Angela's help. Talking with them about the Midwest helped us break away from the flashy LA lifestyle sometimes. We also became friends with some very famous people, like those on the covers of Glamour, GQ, and People magazines. They were TV actors, screenwriters, and even movie superstars. Jamie Breland and Barbie Raines were very famous movie stars. Jamie was being called the next Brad Pitt or Tom Cruise. He starred in the last two Mission Impossible movies and was named Sexiest Man Alive by People magazine. Barbie starred in several romantic comedies. Both had been on the cover of People multiple times, and the media compared them to Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie, calling them Jambi. Jamie was tall with wavy brown hair and a playful smile, which seemed to make many women like him. Barbie had black hair, dark eyes, and high cheekbones. She had an amazing figure. We met Jamie and Barbie at a party at the Douglas/Zeta Jones house in November. We were surprised when Barbie called us a couple of weeks later to invite us to a small dinner party. Our relationship grew from there. Irina and I got over our initial awe and began enjoying their company. It helped that Barbie was from Ohio, originally named Jane Ann Stasky, and Jamie grew up on a ranch in Texas. Neither of them was from L.A. They often made jokes about the constant media attention they got. We went out to dinner with them, sailed on their big boat, named the Sweet Barbie, or took a helicopter to Catalina Island for picnics with the twins. Jamie and Barbie didn't have kids and seemed to enjoy spending time with Lily and Earl. Irina asked me why I thought they liked us. They could be friends with anyone in the world like Julia Roberts or even the president. Why us? I think they liked that we don't act like crazy fans around them. We seemed normal and not caught up in the Hollywood scene. They probably don't get that much being around movie people in the media all the time. And then there's your looks. I liked it me, confused. Oh, come on, Irina, haven't you noticed how Jamie looks at you? Tom, he's married to Barbie. Why would he look at me that way? I laughed. You're joking, right? Here are 3 reasons. 1, you are incredibly beautiful. Barbie is a movie star, sure, but she doesn't have anything on you. 2, Jamie is a man. Even with a beautiful woman, men often think about other women, especially ones like you who are fun to be around. And 3, Jamie has a reputation for cheating. She looks surprised. Really? Who told you that? Angela and several others. They say he cheats on Barbie, but he's careful about it without getting into long-term things. That's terrible. Does she know? I shrugged. I'm not sure. Hard to believe she doesn't, but I don't know. Maybe they have a secret deal or he just fools her somehow. I held her close. It's not our problem. They're friends, but it's not something we've seen directly. Maybe it's just gossip. But Irina, the way Jamie looks at you and flirts with you, I think there might be something there. She laughed, but I saw she was thinking about it. Then she kissed me and said, "Good thing I don't fall for his charms, huh?" I mean, even if he is the most handsome guy around and every woman wants him, she saw my face, looking a bit upset, but also amused, and laughed. "Don't worry, Tom." She kissed my nose. "He's too handsome for me. I like plain, ordinary guys like you, honey." I playfully growled at her. "I'll show you. Ordinary." I picked her up and carried her down the hall to our bedroom, locking the door behind us. She playfully hit my shoulders, laughing and shouting, "Stop it, you silly man!" Jamie and Barbie didn't become our closest friends, but we got along well and spent time together. We attended their big New Year's Eve party, a major event in Hollywood. They hosted about 150 people at their stylish house by the ocean, and almost everyone there was famous, except us. When Irina and I arrived, dressed up and a bit nervous, Barbie greeted us at the door with a big smile and a kiss for each of us. As she let us inside, she whispered, "Will you both stay over tonight after the party? Jamie and I would love to hang out with you guys." Surprised and flattered, we happily agreed. Our friend Elaine was babysitting and knew we might not come home until the next day. I stepped outside to tell our driver Jason he could go home, and he gave me a big grin and a nod. The party was amazing. For Irina and me, it felt like a night out of a celebrity magazine. We watched, starstruck, enjoying the champagne and great food, and chatted with a few people we recognized. When the party ended around 2 a.m., Jamie grinned and said finally he led us to a cozy patio by the pool with the dark ocean in the distance beneath the stars. What a view. He disappeared and came back with 4 glasses of champagne, a final drink for the night. To good friends, he said, and we all drank, thanking them for an incredible evening. Barbie rolled her eyes. "It's work," she explained when Irina looked confused. We have to entertain industry bigwigs and put on a show. It's not really fun for us." Jamie added, "We prefer being alone or with a few friends like you." We felt special and agreed. We chatted about the party and the people. After a while, I felt really relaxed and a bit odd. "I think I've had too much champagne," I said, and Jamie exchanged a look with Barbie and grinned. "Maybe," he said. We kept talking, and I noticed Barbie moving closer to Jamie. She started touching his chest softly. Soon they were kissing deeply, his arm around her touching her. I expected Irina to be embarrassed, but saw she was watching them, fascinated. Jamie saw my confused look and smiled. Just a little something extra in the champagne. "What's it do?" I asked. I should have been worried, but I wasn't. I just felt good and relaxed, noticing the cool breeze and the soft sofa. Barbie whispered, "Irina, why don't you sit on Tom's lap?" Irina moved over to me, sat on my lap, and kissed me deeply. I was surprised, but she was very into it. We kissed for a while watching Barbie and Jamie. They were even more affectionate now with Barbie's hand moving over Jamie. Normally, Irina would be embarrassed, and I would have left the room, but we both felt different and kept kissing, watching them. When Barbie started to undress Jamie, I felt more uneasy. As things got more intense between them, I gently stood up with Irina and said, "I think it's time for us to go to bed." "Shall we go to the guest bedroom?" Jamie asked, pausing. Jamie pulled his lips away from Barbie's chest and looked disappointed, but nodded, saying, "Sure, man, but you can stay here a bit longer if you want." I simply shook my head and led Irina out of the room. She kept looking back as Barbie bent down to Jamie again. I think she would have watched them all night if I hadn't taken her away. We barely closed the guest bedroom door before Irina grabbed me and pulled my hands onto her bottom. She was excited, moving slowly because of the ecstasy and champagne. We took off our clothes and got on the bed. It was intense, but calm, unlike anything we'd done before. I was very aroused, but not in a rush. Everything felt good, touching her hair, feeling the cool sheets, and kissing her. We played together for almost an hour before we finally had sex. It was slow and gentle. We didn't rush, just kissed and touched each other. We even fell asleep that way. I don't remember if either of us climaxed. When we woke up around 11 the next morning, the house was quiet. Irina and I got dressed and decided to leave without disturbing our hosts. She wrote a thank you note while I called Jason to pick us up. All afternoon, we were quiet and thoughtful. I figured Irina was thinking about the previous night, just like I was. We finally talked about it that night after the kids went to bed. "I guess it was fun," Irina said, sounding unsure. "You don't seem convinced," I replied. "Well, the time with you was great," she said with a smile, very relaxed. "I never knew ecstasy did that." Then she added, "But I'm not sure about what Jamie did." "You mean putting ecstasy in our drinks without asking?" I asked. "Yes, that. And what he and Barbie started doing right in front of us. I had wondered if they were leading up to something more, but I kept quiet. Irina was thinking the same thing. "Do you think they wanted to ask us to swap or something?" she asked. "It crossed my mind," I said. "How would you have felt about that? If it wasn't for the drug, I would have left right away, but I felt so calm." We talked for a long time. In the end, we agreed we weren't angry at Jamie and Barbie, but we didn't want to get involved in anything beyond our marriage. A few months later, we had another adventure with Jamie and Barbie on a big yacht in the Aegean Sea. They wanted to spend 2 weeks cruising and asked us to join for the second week. Jamie's assistant found the boat, and they made detailed plans to get there. They spread a story that they were hiking in the Himalayas, but they actually flew to New Delhi, then secretly to Istanbul, and then to a small city in Greece where the boat picked them up. Irina and I were glad we didn't have to go through all that trouble to travel, but it worked because no one knew where they really were. When it was time for us to join them, we left Athens in a hired speedboat. The driver thought he was taking us to Santorini, but we met up with the yacht's small boat, transferred, and boarded the yacht. It was a bright day, but Jamie and Barbie were nowhere to be seen. The crew took us to our cabin, showed us the luxurious amenities, and told us lunch would be on deck in 20 minutes. "Can you believe this, Tom?" Irina said, looking around the beautiful cabin. It felt like a 5-star hotel. There was even a sunken tub in the bathroom. We quickly unpacked, put on our swimsuits, and headed to the deck. Irina went ahead, and I heard her gasp. "Jamie? My God, I came up to see Jamie standing naked, holding a glass of champagne. "Greetings," he said cheerfully. "So glad you made it. Have a drink." We both stared at his tan body. He'd been sunbathing nude for days. His body was strong and fit. Irina turned to me, her face red. "Tom, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." "It's all right, honey," I said. And to Jamie, "Buddy, we're not ready for this." "Are you sure, Tom?" Jamie asked. "It feels so nice and free out here," Irina said. We turned to see Barbie approaching just as naked and tanned and just as beautiful. Her body moved gracefully and she looked stunning. Irina and I stared for a moment. Then Irina hit her face in my shoulder. I said, "Barbie, Jamie, we're just not ready for this." "Sorry, we'll go back downstairs." Barbie and Jamie exchanged a look. Barbie then quickly said, "No, don't go, Tom. Sorry, we'll get our suits on." "Wait just a moment." She grabbed Jamie's trunks and tossed them to him, then quickly put on her tiny bikini. "How's that?" she asked once they were covered. Their swimsuits were small, but at least they were decent. Irina and I smiled awkwardly and joined them at a table near the back of the boat where a nice lunch was laid out. Jamie smiled. "We're so sorry. We almost never get this much privacy. And when we do, it's nice not to wear clothes. Didn't mean to surprise you." We told them it was fine, no problem, don't worry about it, even though I could tell Irina was still shaken. Later in the cabin, she said, "I was so freaked out, Tom. I mean, there he is, the world's sexiest man, and I'm standing 6 feet from him, and he's completely naked, and he looks good too, don't you think?" Irina blushed and looked shyly at me. "Yes, he does. And Barbie, wow, like a goddess in a painting. Yes, they sure are something. Jamie and Barbie, I mean, not just Barbie." Irina saw me grinning and threw a towel at me. "You're impossible, Tom Lawrence." We spent the afternoon napping, tired from our travels, and joined Jamie and Barbie on deck for dinner. We enjoyed fish caught by the crew, fresh local produce, and some champagne. Actually, we started with ouzo, but Irina and I quickly admitted it tasted awful to us. The evening was relaxing and wonderful. We talked, laughed, drank until we were a bit tipsy and watched the sky turn deep blue with countless stars appearing. It felt magical. Barbie said, "We're both sorry about before. It wasn't fair not to warn you that we wouldn't be wearing anything." We both insisted it was no big deal, and she continued, "Are you sure you don't want to try it? There's no one around for 50 miles except the crew, and they're used to it. We're all friends, and it just feels so great to have the sun and breeze on your body." I stayed quiet and let Irina answer. She looked thoughtful. "Actually, Barbie, I thought maybe we would go without tops. That's normal in Europe, right? But I just don't feel comfortable without something on." "That's fine. Irina, really." Barbie smiled. "Bikini bottoms it is. And I'll make sure Jamie keeps something on too, though it might just be a thong," Jamie added. "We're still going to swim naked. Barbie and I, it feels great without a suit. I hope you feel comfortable joining us, but it's up to you. We promise we'll put our suits back on when we're on board, okay?" Irina and I looked at each other and hesitantly agreed. So, Irina and I managed to avoid a week of complete nudity on the yacht with the world's sexiest couple. But barely. Barbie's bikini bottoms were tiny, and Jamie spent the week in a thong that didn't cover much. Irina's bikini bottoms were a bit more modest, but still showed a lot of her beautiful body for Jamie and me to enjoy. I wore baggy trunks, and Barbie loved teasing me about them. Parts of the week felt natural and comfortable in our near nakedness. The sun and breeze did feel great, especially in the morning or evening when it wasn't so hot. Irina and I felt free, relaxed, and enjoyed eating, talking, sometimes reading, and taking long afternoon naps. All 4 of us swam naked with Irina and me, discreetly taking off our suits before diving in. It felt wonderful to swim without anything on, and Jamie and Barbie always made sure to keep things friendly, not teasing or doing anything inappropriate around us. There were times Jamie was playful, though. Sunscreen was a must under the strong sun, and he often arranged it so I was putting lotion on Barbie while he did the same for Irina. Putting lotion on Barbie's smooth skin was certainly not a problem for me, and I can't deny how much I enjoyed it, especially when she sighed with contentment or said how good it felt. I kept things proper. I never moved my fingers under her suit. When she turned onto her back, I told her to put lotion on her own chest. "You're no fun," she said, teasing as she took the lotion and rubbed it on herself. When she put lotion on me, she'd sometimes run her fingers close to my private parts, just to tease me. But Jamie was more forward with Irina. He rubbed her slowly with the lotion, whispering in her ear how beautiful she was. He wanted to touch her more, but she stopped him. Playing around like this got Irina excited every morning. Sometimes right after lunch, she'd grab my hand and say, "Come on, Tom, I need a nap." Jamie would grin and Barbie would laugh, making Irina blush, but she wouldn't wait. In our cabin, she'd quickly take off our suits, whispering, "Tom, I need you right now." We would come together quickly. Afterward, Irina would tell me how Jamie had been touching her and what he whispered. "I stop his hands from going too far, but I can't help getting excited," she said. I told her, "Barbie does the same to me. It's okay as long as you're with me. Don't worry if you think about Jamie." I was joking, but she looked serious. "Really, Tom, you don't mind?" "No, I said he's attractive, a famous star and almost naked touching you. How could that not excite you?" She looked a bit more comfortable. "Okay, but don't leave me alone with him even for a minute." I wanted to tease her more, but didn't want to hurt her feelings. On our third day, Jamie almost got Irina alone. He and I had put lotion on our wives, and now they were working on us. We both had noticeable bulges, but we acted like we didn't see them. Jamie said, "Barbie, where's that German magazine?" He turned to me. "You guys need to see it. It talks about us climbing a mountain and fighting at the top," Barbie said. "It's in the room. Tom and I will get it." Before I could react, she pulled me towards the stairs. I saw Irina's worried face as we went. Once we reached the bottom, I said, "Wait, Barbie, I need to leave my sunglasses on deck. I won't see well down here." I quickly headed back. When I got to the deck, I saw Jamie close to Irina, touching her shoulders and moving towards her chest. He stopped when he saw me. "That was quick," he said, looking a bit annoyed. "I thought I'd leave my sunglasses here." I said. I moved slowly, trying to keep the conversation going. "Is the article in German? I don't know if I can read it," I said. I kept talking until Barbie came back with the magazine. Irina read it out loud, and we all laughed. The rest of the week was nice, with no more attempts to separate us, but one night Irina went to the bathroom and took a while to come back. I was about to check on her when she returned, looking strange. "Tom," she whispered, "they're doing it." "Barbie and Jamie?" I asked, still half asleep. Irina locked the door, took off her nightie, and jumped into bed with me. When I walked back from the bathroom, their door was open, and they were, "You know," she whispered excitedly. "And you watched." I said, "Oh, Tom, I couldn't help it." She was moving against me, clearly excited. "They opened the door on purpose." She said, "I didn't mean to look," but she moved down and started to please me with her mouth until I was ready again. Then she pulled me on top of her, guiding me in. They were doing it with her on the bed and him standing. She panted. We came together again. Her excitement added to ours. Her body moved with each breath. She arched her back, and she pushed back against him, making soft sounds. And he was just moving in and out of her, almost pulling out, then pushing hard. "Oh, Tom. Oh my God, don't stop." Suddenly, Irina shuddered beneath me. She reached a peak not more than 2 minutes after I had started, and I followed. I couldn't hold back, groaning as I moved. When we calmed down, lying close in each other's arms, Irina looked at me. "I'm so sorry, Tom." "For what? Watching them?" She looked away, not for watching, but for staying there so long. I was lost in it. It wasn't until Barbie reached her peak that I realized what I was doing, and I pulled myself away. "Sweetheart," I kissed her. "You have nothing to be sorry for. They probably opened the door hoping you'd watch, and who could resist something like that? Certainly not me. Really, it's fine." I kissed her again and stroked her hair. To myself, I thought, "I'm just glad you came back to me instead of going in there." Finally, I walked back to the car. Night had fallen. I drove home slowly back to Irina and my 2 lovely children, wondering if we'd ever be a family again, wondering if there was any way forward from here. When I got home, the lights were off in the twins' rooms. Only the master bedroom was lit up, but as I reached the front steps, the downstairs lights came on and Irina rushed out the door. "Tom, thank God." She ran down the steps and hugged me tightly. I gently released her arms and stepped back. "Don't do that, Irina," I said very softly, and she started crying again, her eyes never leaving mine. I walked into the house, leaving her crying on the steps. I went straight upstairs, grabbed a few things, and headed for the downstairs guest room. I locked the door and got ready for bed without much care. I didn't think I could sleep, but I knew I didn't want to be around Irina. She knocked on the door, asking for me through her tears, but I didn't answer. Finally, she went away, and surprisingly, I quickly fell into a dreamless sleep. As our second year in California began, Irina and I were happier than ever. She seemed more comfortable with everything, our wealth, our new home, and above all, her own beauty. I felt proud watching her talk with rich bankers or movie stars as well as with the parents of Lily and Earl's friends from nursery school. Elaine, our almost perfect nanny, lived in our guest house. This meant Irina and I had the freedom to take trips to places like San Francisco, New York, or even Paris for the weekend. Imagine being rich enough to take a weekend trip to Paris. Of course, we didn't do that often. TLI, the company Rick Torgerson and I were working on, needed a lot of my time. I was in Madison at least 3 days a month and at other times making quick trips to raise money or find the best people in Silicon Valley. The work was going well, and I found it rewarding to be busy again, not to mention that Rick was the perfect partner as he had been when we first worked together. I flew back from a 2-day trip on a Sunday afternoon in late October, and our driver Jason picked me up at LAX around 5 p.m. Usually talkative, he was quiet. "Anything going on, Jason? You seem a bit quiet today." There was a pause, then sounding uneasy, he said, Tom, I don't really want to say too much, but Irina, well, she's kind of upset. You'll see when I get you home." I became worried, upset about what is she sick or the twins okay? No, everyone's fine. It's nothing like that. Look, I really don't want to get in the middle. We'll be at the house in 5 minutes, okay? And I couldn't get another word out of him no matter how hard I tried. When I got to the house, I found Elaine watching Lily and Earl, who were playing on the swings. We had a loud, happy reunion, and it took over 15 minutes before I could break away to find Irina. Elaine gave me a serious look, but I didn't know what it meant. I hurried to the bedroom and found my wife lying on the bed in her bathrobe. She turned to me, her face full of sadness, and I saw she had been crying. "Honey, what is it? What's wrong?" I ran to her, taking her in my arms, but she pushed me away. "No, don't touch me, Tom. You won't want to touch me again when you know." She burst into loud sobbing, unable to finish. I went to the other side of the bed, kneeling and holding her hands as she cried. She tried to pull away, but I held on. "Irina, honey, talk to me. Whatever it is, we can deal with it as long as you and the twins are all right." "But I'm not all right," she cried, cutting me off. "I'll never be all right again." She took a long, shaky breath. "Tom, I was with Jamie. Last night we had sex. After she told me, after I fell back into a chair in shock, after I ran out of the house and drove to the hill by the ocean, after I came back and slept in the guest room, came the next day. Monday, the day I had to get up and face what was to come. I woke up at 7:30 and went straight for a long, hot shower in the guest bathroom with the door locked. When I came out of the room, I saw Irina standing in the hallway. She looked terrible. Her hair was messy, her eyes were swollen, and her face showed signs of crying. Her beautiful, perfect face. "Tom," she said softly. She sounded unsure, like she didn't know if she had the right to talk to me. "We'll talk later," I said. I didn't even want to look at her. "I know we need to talk, but I'm not ready yet. But I promise I won't do anything crazy, Irina. I won't hurt anyone or leave you or run away somewhere far, but you need to leave me alone for a while first." Without waiting for her reply, I turned around and got dressed. After a silent breakfast by myself, where I read the paper without really seeing it, I went to my office and called Jason to come over. It was time to find out what had happened. When he came in looking worried, I locked the door and had him sit across from my desk. He had probably never seen me look so serious before. "Jason, Irina told me some of it, just the basics. Please tell me everything you know." He sighed and looked down for a minute. "Okay, Tom. Well, you remember that Jamie and Barbie had a big party the night before last, right?" "Yes. It was to celebrate Jamie's new action movie that had just been released. Irina and I were fine with her going without me. Jamie and Barbie were our good friends after all. Well, I took Irina there on Saturday night and figured I'd be bringing her home too. But around 11:30, Ned Compton, Jamie and Barbie's driver, came outside and found me. He told me I could leave. He said Barbie had invited Irina to stay over after the party and she'd call the next day when she needed to be picked up. This was believable. Irina and I had stayed over at friends' houses before when parties went late. So I went home, Jason said, and then Barbie called me a little before noon yesterday and asked me to come pick up Irina. "Wait, Irina didn't call you herself?" "Why not?" "No idea," he said. "So I went and got her and she looked terrible. Not just tired, like she was really sad, like someone had died. She was still in her party dress, but she hadn't brushed her hair, done her makeup, or even washed her face. I asked her if she was okay, and she just shook her head. "No," she said. "I'm not okay. I don't think I'll ever be okay again." Jason told me she hadn't said anything else, just cried a little on the ride home. And what do you think happened? I looked at him hard. He was silent. "Listen, Jason, I like you and I trust you. Please be honest with me, I can handle it." He smiled sadly. "If I had to guess Tom, well, Jamie has a reputation with ladies. If I had to guess, I'd say that somehow Jamie got Irina to be with him." I nodded. "Yeah, that's what she told me, but not that she sent you home. That makes it sound planned, doesn't it?" Jason didn't answer, and we sat silently for a couple of minutes. "Okay, Jason, thanks," I said, standing up. He walked to the door, and as he opened it, he said, "Listen, Tom, I'm really sorry." "Me too," I said, watching him leave. I sat in my office and made some calls, moving a trip to Northern California I hadn't planned to make for another 10 days. I wanted to get out of the house. I ran upstairs and packed a small bag. Then I wrote a short note to Irina and left it on the kitchen table. "I'm going to be away for 3 days. We'll talk when I get back, I promise, but I need some time right now. Please take good care of the twins and don't worry, Tom." I tried to make myself write Love Tom just to make her feel better, but I couldn't do it. I did love her. She was my whole life, but I couldn't put the word down on paper right then. The time away didn't help much, except that I was too busy to think about Irina every moment. I got caught up in meetings and planning sessions, work that I was good at and could focus on. Sometimes I could forget about her and Jamie for as long as 15 minutes or so, and then the thoughts would crash back into my mind. Once I must have flinched visibly in a meeting because the vice president for strategic planning at Optimal Software stopped to ask if I was okay. It took a minute before I could focus enough to answer her. I'd been in the middle of a bad thought, seeing Jamie with Irina, them being close. Still, the days were almost bearable. The nights in a hotel room at the Hilton were not. I brought a couple of books, but I couldn't read them. I watched some bad movies, and on the second night I drank some scotch to help me sleep. It wasn't worth it. The next day, I was not just unhappy, but also dealing with a bad headache. The visions were with me most of the time. Irina with Jamie being close, their passionate kisses. It was like a movie inside my head when I couldn't turn off. How could I compete with someone like him? He was the sexiest man on earth with those muscles and charm. Not wanting to talk to Irina or even hear her voice, I texted her once a day just to say I was safe. On Thursday, I sent a message that said, "I'll be home tomorrow night for dinner. Let's talk when the twins are in bed." When I walked into my house on Friday, tired and sad, Lily and Earl ran up to me. Thank goodness they were too young at 5.5 to notice the sadness and stress between their parents. But Elaine saw it and watched me with worry. At dinner, I let them feed me pieces of their hot dogs. They told me about school and showed me their crayon drawings. Since I'd been away, they wanted me to give them their baths that night. It was a happy and messy hour. I loved my children very much, and the trouble Irina had caused made my time with them feel even more special. I wasn't sure how much longer we'd all live together in the same house. When I entered the bedroom, Irina sat on the love seat looking unhappy. I ignored her and went to the closet to get dry clothes, tossing the ones the twins had drenched over the tub rail in the bathroom. Then, not very enthusiastically, I went back in and sat on the bed facing her. "Okay, I'm back. Tom, none of this is what you think it is." I waited in silence. Oh, damn it. She started crying and came to me with her arms out. "Hold me, please." I let her hug me mechanically, putting my arms around her. I felt cold and empty. She cried, her tears soaking my neck and shirt while I patted her back, wishing I could be somewhere else, wishing we didn't have to do this. I grew impatient. Before she completely calmed down, I stood up and led her back to the love seat. "Sit," I said. She did, looking shocked and a bit scared. "Now, Irina, talk to me. Tell me what happened." She pulled herself together and looked into my eyes, maybe hoping for some comfort, though I doubt she found any. "Tom, I will tell you everything. I swear, everything I remember. But you need to know one thing first. I didn't want this. I didn't mean for it to happen. I don't really understand why it did." She looked down. "I always loved that you were my first, last, and only love for my whole life. And now that's... She started crying again. Now that's all ruined. "Stop crying," I shouted, making her jump. She stared at me with wide eyes, then wiped her face and sat up straight as if ready to take her punishment. "You can cry all you want later," I said more gently. "I'll probably cry too. But now, please just tell me what happened at the party." "Okay, yes, you're right. It was a usual Jamie and Barbie party. Fancy, full of glitter with all the beautiful people in L.A. You know, I was a little nervous at first without you, but then I saw Barbie. She introduced me to a few people, and I talked to Tony and Margaret and some of my friends. And, well, I thanks a bit to Tony and Margaret and some others we know, yes. Well, I relaxed and just had a good time. Sometimes during the evening, not too late, I think. Barbie came and pulled me aside. She said her driver, Ned, told her that Jason wasn't feeling well and thought he should go home. So she invited me to stay over after the party was finished. "Wait a minute," I said. "Barbie told you that Jason needed to leave. That's why you stayed over." She nodded, looking puzzled. "Yes, that's what she said Ned told her why." "Never mind, just go on. Well, at the end of the party, it was like that other time last year when you and I both stayed over. Jamie brought out the champagne. Not that any of us needed more. I was already a bit tipsy, and the three of us sat by the pool and laughed and joked about everything. I felt pretty mellow, and I teased him about whether he'd put something special in the champagne again, and he just winked at me. And then, after a while, I felt so relaxed. I wondered if he really had put something in the drink, but I was just so comfortable that it didn't seem to matter, and I didn't say anything. Just like the other time, Jamie and Barbie started kissing, and I watched for a while. Barbie started undoing his shirt and rubbing his chest, and he opened her blouse, and you get the idea. She seemed to be enjoying it. Irina looked away, clearly uncomfortable. "And you were getting turned on," I said. She nodded, looking ashamed. "Yes, I was. Their bodies are so beautiful, and Barbie was sighing and touching Jamie, and he was... Anyway, she slid down between his legs and, started doing stuff. I realized later she was making sure I saw everything like a show for me. She pushed his legs apart so I could see what she did with her mouth and hands." Irina struggled to continue the story. I realized I was getting excited, like when I watched them on the boat during our vacation. Jamie looked at me saying I should join them, let him kiss me. I didn't move. I just watched. I think I closed my eyes at some point, started touching myself, listening to the sounds they made. Jamie must have given me a lot of something because I felt way more out of it than last year when we both were there. And then I felt a light touch on my knee, gently pushing my legs apart. At first I wasn't sure it was real, so relaxed. I couldn't open my eyes, just touching my upper body. Then I realized someone's hand was moving up my legs, pushing them apart. It went on for a long time until the hand touched my... She looked at me, eyes full of worry, and I waited for her to go on. And then, while that hand touched and caressed me, I felt kisses on my neck, a body pressed against me. I thought it had to be Jamie, but I didn't want to open my eyes. I just felt everything, the lips, the hand between my legs, my own hand. Slowly, very slowly, he stroked me, and I got more and more excited. Then he stood me up just long enough to pull my dress over my head. He laid me back down on the couch and took off my shoes and panties. Then I opened my eyes, even though it took a lot of effort. Barbie was gone. It was just Jamie and me in the room. I protested a little. I know I did. I said, "No, where's Tom?" or something like that. He smiled and said, "I'm Tom tonight, just relax and enjoy." I couldn't stop myself, and you went along with that. "Tom, please, don't you think I've thought about it 1,000,000 times? Don't you think I hate what I did? What he made me do? Don't you know I'd give anything to undo it?" She was crying, glaring at me, shaking with emotion. We sat there. I didn't look at her. I didn't look at anything. Finally, I made her go on. I said, "Okay, let me hear the rest. He made you feel amazing. Made you feel like you never felt before, right? Jamie Breland, the world's sexiest man, making you feel incredible. How could it not be thrilling?" She shouted at me to stop, cried harder than told me everything. He had kissed and touched her for a long time, making her cry out. Then he climbed on top of her and had sex with her. It seemed to last forever because of the ecstasy. And yes, damn it, yes, it was exciting. It was unbelievably exciting. Not because of Jamie, you jerk, because I was turned on and full of drugs and I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't even know it was Jamie. Part of my mind thought it was you." When it was finally over, she said, he took her to the guest bedroom. She fell asleep right away without even the strength to get under the covers. Sometime in the middle of the night, I realized he was on top of me again. He had me on my knees and was having sex with me from behind. I was still high, not really all there, and I just let him do it. Irina was dry-eyed now, angry and beyond tears. I was still a mess, confused and out of it. It was dark. I didn't feel any pleasure. I didn't have the energy to even turn around and see who was behind me, whether it was you or Jamie. Then he must have finished, and I fell asleep again. When she woke up, it was 11 a.m. and the sun was shining through the window. Jamie was sitting by her side wearing only boxer shorts, touching her thighs. He was smiling at me and said, "Morning, Irina boy, you were something last night. How about a little more loving before breakfast?" And he started to pull his shorts off and climbed back on the bed with me. It took Irina a moment, feeling sleepy, to remember what had happened. Then she started screaming. She said, "I just yelled at him as loud as I could. Get out!" I must have scared him because he jumped off the bed and disappeared. I started frantically looking around for my clothes, and in a minute, Barbie came running in and asked if I was all right. I just said I needed to go home right away, and could she help me? She went and got my dress, underwear, and shoes, and she called Jason to come get me. I sat there in their guest room by myself until he arrived. I wouldn't talk to Jamie or Barbie. I wouldn't eat or drink anything. I just wanted to get out of there. When I got home, I went straight into the shower and stood in it for more than an hour, washing and crying. Irina wasn't angry anymore. All the defiance had gone out of her. She sat slumped on the love seat, her head in her hands, looking at the floor. "Now you know it all," she said, "the whole terrible story. Now you can do whatever you want, Tom. Divorce me, throw me out of the house." "I don't know. I can't believe I did it, but I did it. I cheated on you." Without another word, without looking at me, she got up and left the bedroom, closing the door behind her. I spent another night in the guest room, but this time I didn't fall asleep for hours. There were two things I understood clearly. Two things I was going to have to come to terms with. The first was that, if her story was true, Irina had essentially been raped. She hadn't chosen to have sex with Jamie, hadn't taken advantage of my absence to have a fling. She'd been seduced, manipulated, and above all drugged, not only by Jamie, but by Barbie as well. And I knew that I had to forgive her. It's not her fault. She was the victim of a horrible act, especially by someone she trusted. But the second thing is that I was torn apart with jealousy and insecurity. In my mind, I knew this happened to Irina against her will. But my feelings were filled with the thoughts of my beautiful wife being with another man, groaning with pleasure as they were together. I could see that lovely body that had always belonged only to me, and it was in Jamie's arms. It was Jamie being with her. I wasn't sure I could ever control those visions. I woke up late after the twins had left for school. I had a quiet breakfast alone and then called Jason, asking him to come over. We sat in my study. I explained what I needed his help with. He agreed and picked up the phone to call his friend Ned Compton. "Ned, hey, it's Jason. Got a minute?" "Yeah, just a couple of things. About Saturday night when you told me I could leave, did Irina say she was staying over?" "Uh-huh. Yeah. So it was Barbie's idea?" "Okay, no problem. Just curious." "All right, the main thing. Tom wants to talk to Barbie quietly. He's planning a surprise for Irina and needs Barbie's advice. What's her schedule today?" "Yeah, uh-huh. Yeah, that works. Great. Can you swing by at 12:15? "Fantastic, I'll tell him. Thanks, man. Later." Jason hung up and turned to me with a smile. Ned said Barbie told him to send me home that night. He never saw Irina. Barbie's going to the studio this afternoon for a meeting. Ned will pick you up on his way to get her so you can talk in the car. If you need, I'll pick you up when you're done." "Great, Jason." "Thanks," I said. When Barbie bent down to get into the car, she was surprised to see me. She looked cautious. "Tom, oh, hi, nice to see you. This is a surprise." I greeted her with a kiss on the cheek. Our usual hello. "Hi, Barbie. You look lovely as always. I hope to talk with you for a few minutes while Ned drives you to the studio." I pressed the button to raise the privacy glass between us and Ned. Once it was up, I faced her. "Barbie, I'm not happy that Jamie was with Irina at your house the other night. I thought you were our friend. How could you let that happen? She looked down, avoiding my eyes. I'm sorry, Tom. Really? If it were up to me, it wouldn't have happened. What does that mean? I was getting angry. Irina said you were a part of it. Tell me what happened. She sighed. Jamie gets what he wants. When Jamie takes a liking to a woman, he won't stop. I love Irina. I don't think of her in a bad way. But Jamie? She turned to look at me. Remember a year ago after our big party when we all drank champagne and he and I were fooling around in front of you? That was supposed to start a night of switching partners, Jamie with Irina, me with you. But you didn't want to play along. I was shocked, not by the memory, but by how she said it. You wanted to be with me? Calmly, she replied, Not really, Tom. I like you a lot, but no. I'd be happy with Jamie only. You getting me was the price for Jamie to get what he wanted. And when it didn't happen, either at our vacation in the Aegean last spring, he became more determined. My head was spinning. So when Jamie wants to be with a woman, you help by making yourself available to her partner. She nodded, looking sad. It sounds pretty bad, doesn't it? I sat back. So, Barbie, what happened the other night? Pretty much the same as a year ago when it was the four of us. Jamie put something in the champagne. This year, I think he gave Irina an extra large dose. Then he and I started fooling around in front of her. He played with me. And I did things to him, making sure Irina could see everything. She looked excited, and the drug kept her from getting embarrassed and leaving the room. Then Jamie sent me out of the room and went over to be with Irina right there on the couch. He probably did a lot before then. You know, that's what he usually does, she said bitterly. Did she try to stop him? I asked. She couldn't with all that stuff in her. Jamie wouldn't have taken no for an answer. He wouldn't have hit her or anything, but whatever she said wouldn't have stopped him. And she was so out of it that she couldn't fight him off. We were silent for a moment, me thinking about my so-called friend's betrayal. And after that, the next morning, I'm really sorry, Tom, she said. Most women are thrilled to be with Jamie, the world's sexiest man. It's a story to tell their grandchildren. But when Irina woke up and found Jamie there, she got angry, started screaming for him to leave. He was shocked, the jerk. Couldn't believe a woman would be upset to be with him. So he hid in the bedroom, and I helped Irina get dressed and called your driver to pick her up. She was a wreck, Tom. After yelling, she became almost unresponsive. Didn't even talk to me. Finally, she looked me in the eye. I am so very sorry about this. I held back the angry words I wanted to say. How did Irina end up staying over? Jamie's idea, she said. He wanted another chance to sleep with her, figuring it would be easier with you gone. So he had me send Ned to tell your driver to leave. Then I told Irina that he felt sick and had to go. She could stay over. Why wouldn't she believe me? We're friends. So she didn't think twice about it. Barbie sounded bitter. Why, Barbie? I don't get it. I can see why Jamie might want to sleep with every beautiful woman he meets, even though he's married to you. But why do you let him? Why are you willing to sleep with other men to help him do it? How could you deceive Irina this way? We thought you were one of our closest friends. She sighed and gave me a pleading look. Try to understand, Tom. When Jamie and I first got together, I was getting small parts in unimportant movies. Now, being married to the biggest star in Hollywood, I'm getting leading roles in big-budget comedies. My last movie made $160 million, and studios are offering me nearly $10 million per film. I know Jamie is the big draw, the one with the talent, the major heartthrob. If we break up, my career will be over in a year. Do you think I like my husband sleeping with every little piece of fluff that catches his eye? Do you think I enjoy sleeping with random guys just to help Jamie get what he wants? She shook her head. So I said slowly, It's all about your career. I let the sarcasm sink in. I don't know which one of you is worse. You or Jamie, it's a toss-up. I didn't want to be in the car with her any longer. I lowered the privacy window and asked Ned to let me out at the corner. I left the car without looking back. I think I heard Barbie say, I'm sorry, Tom, as I closed the door. I walked a block to a Dunkin' Donuts and called Jason to pick me up. I found Irina sitting in a chair in the backyard looking out at the pool. Will you come for a drive with me? She looked up at me, trying to read my face. She looked tired and sad and unsure what to expect. Of course, Tom, let me get some shoes. I drove us to our favorite spot in Malibu overlooking the ocean. We walked out to the edge and sat together on a rock. I put my arm around her waist and gently pulled her close to me. I spoke to Barbie today. I said, they set you up, you know. You checked up on me? She said angrily. I just looked steadily at her. After a moment, her face softened into a sad expression and she nodded. Yes, of course you did. I'm sorry, Tom. I don't suppose you're feeling very trusting right now. What matters is that he hurt you, Irina. She looked at me, shocked, and I continued. They told Jason you were staying over and then lied to you about his feeling sick. Then Jamie gave you a big dose of ecstasy, and the two of them put on a show to get you excited. When he thought you were ready, Barbie disappeared and he came over and took advantage of you. In an angry tone, I said, according to Barbie, they do this quite regularly whenever some woman catches Jamie's eye, and she also said that Jamie has wanted you for a long time. The little act they put on for us last year after their party was supposed to end in a night of wife-swapping. Jamie also tried everything he could to make it happen while we were on vacation with them on the boat. And Barbie went along with this? Why? Irina sounded more confused than angry. Are you ready for this? It's all about her career. I said, married to Jamie. She's a big star. Without him, she wouldn't be. So she does whatever she needs to so he can have the girl of the moment. I snorted. I guess you should be flattered, honey. He's been after you for more than a year. He didn't give up easily. Irina stood up and began to pace. I watched her fists clench and her face grow tight with anger. She came back and stood in front of me, looking down. Are you sure about this, Tom? Two people we really thought were our friends set us up like this, drugging me and all that. Was it all because Jamie wanted me? I nodded. They may or may not also like us as friends, but at least some of it was about Jamie wanting you. Can we hurt them? She said, something slow and lingering. I laughed, pleased to see some of Irina's spirit returning. Sounds like a good plan to me. Of course it might be difficult. She paced some more deep in thought. Finally she stopped and said hesitantly, And where does that leave us? It leaves us with some healing to do. You need to get over what happened to you by people you trusted. I need to get over the feeling of letting you down, of not being there to protect you. Oh, Tom, she said, throwing her arms around me, I know we can do that. She clung to me, kissing my lips and cheeks, tears in her eyes. There's more, though. I also need to get over the pictures in my head, you and Jamie, the man that so many women dream about, him touching you, him being with you, making you feel good. But Tom, she cried, I was drugged. I didn't even know what I was doing. I was half convinced it was you. I know that. I know that, Irina, really. But it doesn't mean the pictures go away, and the fear that I can never be the partner for you that he was. Irina stepped back a little. She looked at me with the most serious, determined expression I'd ever seen. Tom, Lawrence, you listen to me. That is ridiculous, totally crazy. I didn't want Jamie. I have never wanted Jamie. And the sex was what it was because I was confused and full of that drug. The only man I ever wanted to be with is you. Since the day we met at that college party, I smiled at her. Can you say you've never thought about Jamie's body? After the party last year, after seeing him without clothes on the boat, after watching him with Barbie in the cabin, you've never imagined touching his chest or having his arms around you or anything like that. She looked right at me. Sure, I have from time to time. Everyone has daydreams, Tom. Haven't you also thought about Barbie? Her looks? Imagine her with you? So what? We all daydream. It doesn't mean I wanted to be with Jamie or anyone else, just like I don't think you wanted to be with Barbie. How is that different? The difference, I said slowly, is that you did end up with him. I know you didn't mean to, but it happened. And it's going to take me some time to get over it. Irina looked at me sadly, then nodded. I took her in my arms, and we held each other quietly, looking out at the Pacific Ocean. Ralph stood up to shake my hand, then looked at me with curiosity as we sat down on either side of his desk. Well, Tom, what can I do for you today? I smiled at him. Ralph Elliott had been our lawyer since Irina and I moved to California. He seemed very serious at first, but I got to know his funny side. He took his job seriously, but not himself, and definitely not the crazy Hollywood lifestyle. First, Ralph, just to confirm, anything we talk about here is private, right? He raised an eyebrow and smiled. Of course, Tom. Planning something big, not that you'd need to. Seriously, unless I find out about any criminal activity, which I must report, everything we talk about is confidential. Okay, let's say, Ralph, hypothetically, that a friend of mine wants something a bit shady done. Not illegal, but something he wants handled quietly. Could you recommend someone discreet and good at such tasks whom my friend could talk to over the phone without meeting? Ralph's smile grew wider. Wow, Tom Lawrence, the straight arrow, what has happened to you? All right, let me think. He thought for a few minutes with his hands together on his chest. Yes, I could arrange for your friend to speak to someone. A friend of a friend, you could say, and the arrangement could stay private for both sides. But there's the matter of trust. Will the person I recommend do the job right? And will your friend keep their promises? That's why I suggest a step-by-step plan. Your friend should set up a plan with many small steps and with payments for each step. That way, as steps are completed and payments made, both sides can trust each other more. We talked for a while, and Ralph gave many useful ideas about timing and communication, like using throwaway cell phones with calls made at certain times. I could tell he was very curious, but held back as a good lawyer would. We agreed that he'd contact the person he had in mind, and if that person was interested, Ralph would give me a phone number to call. As I was leaving, he said, "Tell your friend to be careful, Tom. I'd hate to see this blow up in your, or should I say his, face. You're a successful businessman with a high profile and a lovely family." I flinched at his last remark but didn't say anything. I just smiled, thanked him, and left the office. 4 days later, I made my first call to Ralph's contact. He said to call him Mo and I'd be Larry. Without naming names, I told him the basic idea of what I wanted, and he decided our target would be Curly. I guess the guy watched a lot of old TV. As Ralph suggested, I broke down the project into about 20 parts and worked out payments for each part. The total, after we negotiated, was nearly $2.3 million, but that included over $1 million for bribes and expenses. This job needed to be done right. I bought 2 phones and left Mo's one taped under a bench in a park, along with $10,000 in cash and an envelope. The money was to show Mo that I was serious, which I was, very serious. As things moved forward, more payments were made through electronic transfers via some fake companies Ralph had helped me set up for my friend. This was legal and kept my link to the whole thing almost invisible. Not completely. Nothing is perfect, but Ralph said it was good enough to protect me from all but the most determined investigator. Once Mo had started several parts of the plan, I told him who Curly really was. I could almost hear him smile over the phone. And what did I get from my $2.3 million after more than 6 months? Well, the big headlines in the LA papers tell you all you need to know. Movie star and shocking affair. Jamie's secret revealed, love scandal with young man, movie studios, and Brelin's contracts. World's sexiest man image destroyed. The stories and the photos that came with them were just as shocking as the headlines. A photographer had caught Jamie in a bedroom of a penthouse suite at the Drake Hotel in Chicago. He was with an 18-year-old male model named Hank Werner. The pictures showed Jamie and Werner in a compromising position. The scandal was all over the news for weeks. Entertainment TV channels talked about it non-stop for days. People asked if Jamie Breland was gay or bisexual. What about his marriage to Barbie? Would this end his career? His lawyers threatened to sue to reinstate his movie contracts. But would they win? Would People magazine take away his sexiest man title? Jamie, of course, said it was a setup. He claimed he had gone into a dark bedroom to be with a pretty brunette model named Nicole Chesnov. He said he met her a few weeks earlier at a party in L.A. According to Jamie, Nicole called him several times after their first meeting. She told him she would be in Chicago the same weekend he and Barbie were there for a publicity tour. While Barbie was on TV doing interviews, Jamie met Nicole for a drink in a private room at the back of the Drake's bar. Then, Jamie said, Nicole invited him up to her suite for what he called regular, ordinary sex. But she only wanted to do it in complete darkness, saying it was more exciting that way. When he got to the room, Jamie said Nicole whispered to him to come in and close the door tight. She then led him to the bed. In the dark, they started to get intimate. He thought it was Nicole because of her perfume. Suddenly, the lights went on and a photographer appeared. Jamie realized he was not with Nicole, but with a young man he had never seen before. Jamie swore he was straight and had never had gay sex. He even apologized somewhat to Barbie for cheating on her. Jamie and his PR team tried to convince people of his story, but then the tabloids started digging into old photos. The National Enquirer, People, and TV networks showed photos of Jamie with Nicole at the LA party. In many photos, Nicole was seen introducing Jamie to Hank Werner. To make it worse, Nicole and Hank denied Jamie's story. His lawyers couldn't change their minds. Nicole confirmed she had introduced Jamie to Hank and said Jamie seemed very interested in him. She admitted meeting Jamie at the Drake's bar, but insisted Jamie asked her to arrange a meeting with Hank for him. Werner told the same story. He added that Jamie had been calling and texting him for weeks. There were even records of their conversations, including some very explicit messages from Jamie to Hank. At this point, Jamie was in serious trouble. The movie studios dropped all 3 of his upcoming projects. Barbie, feeling hurt and angry, filed for divorce in a very public way. Jamie became a huge joke overnight. Even though society was becoming more accepting of homosexuality, the gap between Jamie's macho image and his real actions was too big for his PR team to manage. Jamie still had his money, though half would go to Barbie soon, but his career was over. Karina and I followed this saga closely. She was curious. I was satisfied. "You don't seem very surprised by any of this, Tom," she said, watching me closely. I smiled. "I believe bad people often get what's coming to them, Irina. Maybe Jamie just met his fate." Her look turned suspicious, but gay sex with a model? That doesn't seem like him. "Spill, Tom, you know something." Still smiling, I said, "You never really know what's inside a person, even if you think they're a friend. I will say one thing, though. I sure feel bad for him." That made both of us laugh. She couldn't get another word out of me because I planned carefully. Bringing Jamie down took several months. It was a tough time for Irina and me. Forgiving her for what Jamie and Barbie did to her was easy. Forgetting the images was not. The night we talked about what happened, I moved back into our bedroom. I wasn't ready, but I had to take the step. Sleeping in the guest room would raise questions with the twins. More importantly, I needed to reassure Irina, but I asked her for patience. I didn't know when I'd be ready to make love to her again. It was hard. She cried, saying, "But Tom, it wasn't my fault. It wasn't my fault." And I knew that. But the big difference between plain me and handsome Jamie Breland, which never bothered me before, now seemed impossible to ignore. I often wondered if I could really make Irina happy. Sometimes I even doubted if I ever made her happy at all. We would cuddle on the couch while watching TV or in bed before falling asleep. This seemed to comfort her, but I felt terrible because I wasn't showing any interest in being intimate with her. Her sad eyes haunted me. After some weeks, Irina would try to get my attention. She'd wear her prettiest nightgown or walk around with nothing on. She even tried just wearing high heels and a necklace once. I would feel a bit excited, but then worry and fear took over. I never responded to her advances. Sometimes in bed, Irina would touch my hair or stroke my back. She would then move her hand down to my chest, heading lower. I always stopped her and said, "Sorry, honey, I'm just not ready yet." Irina was usually very kind and patient. But one night she got upset. "Tom, it's been over a month. I'm feeling pretty neglected," she said with a frown. Without thinking, I snapped, "Why don't you call Jamie then?" Her face went pale. I immediately apologized, feeling awful. "I'm so sorry, Irina. Please forgive me. I shouldn't have said that." She didn't cry this time. She just turned away, her chin shaking as I begged for her forgiveness. One morning about 6 weeks later, I woke up to find Irina being affectionate. It felt nice, and I started to respond. She smiled at me. But then an image of Jamie came into my mind. I immediately lost my arousal. Irina saw the change and looked hurt. She ran to the bathroom and cried behind the door. I wanted to leave, but I stayed. When she came out, I hugged her and whispered, "I'm so sorry, it's not your fault." That night, we lay in bed together, holding hands and watching a silly TV show. I turned to her and said, "Honey, I know it's been too long. Can I at least touch you?" I wanted to make her feel good somehow. "Thank you, Tom, but no," she said firmly. "That's not what I want. I want you back until you're ready. I'll wait." She turned back to the TV. I felt worse than ever. One night I woke up several times because our son Earl had a cold. Elaine was sleeping next to him, so I didn't have to get up. But his coughing woke me. Whenever I fell back asleep, I had weird dreams. The first ones were about being chased and hiding, but the last dream was different. It was very vivid. In the dream, Irina and I were at Jamie and Barbie's house after a party. We saw Barbie with Jamie just like I remembered. But then the dream changed. Jamie and Irina disappeared. I was on the couch with Barbie. She teased me, and my excitement grew. She slowly took off her clothes and came closer. Without saying anything, I pulled her to me and kissed her intimately. She moaned and came several times. Then I moved over her and teased her again. She was overwhelmed with pleasure. I felt very confident like never before. When I entered her, she came instantly holding me close. We were joined together tightly. I made love to her passionately until we both reached an amazing climax. Afterward, she gently cleaned me with her mouth. As I lay there, I saw Jamie standing in the doorway, naked and looking insignificant. The dream left me feeling strange, but made me realize something important. And he looked at his wife and me with a nervous and scared look. When I looked right at him, he couldn't meet my eyes and looked away. A coughing fit from Earl woke me up then. It was not yet 6 a.m. Irina slept peacefully by my side. I lay there trying to remember the dream. At breakfast, Irina noticed I was quiet and deep in thought. She asked what was going on. "Just a dream," I said. "But I don't remember much of it. Some running around people chasing me, stuff like that." I had already decided not to tell Irina the details. No need to bring up Jamie and Barbie. I was set to leave that afternoon for a 3-day trip to Madison to meet with the TLI engineers about our latest project. The time away turned out to be good for me. Instead of burying myself in work, I used the time on the plane to think about the dream, about Irina and me, and the pain I still felt from Jamie's actions with Irina. I had never thought about the what if. What if it had been me with Barbie instead of Irina with Jamie? Never mind that it would likely never happen. How would I have felt about it? The dream seemed to give me my answer. I would have gone along with Barbie and enjoyed it. But the next day, I would have felt horrible, full of regret and guilt. Because I adore my wife, and cheating on her, even in a situation out of my control, would feel like the worst betrayal. All these months, I'd been scared that what Jamie did to Irina was what she really wanted, that she secretly longed for more of him. But in my dream, after my night with Barbie, it left me wanting only my wife. It had been passionate, but so what? The fact that someone else could attract me wasn't news. It's true for almost every married person. Throw in some drugs and a show, and who could resist? The fact was, and I realized with shame that I'd known this for more than a year, that Irina and I had considered and rejected the idea of swapping with Jamie and Barbie. We knew they were offering, it was clear enough on that boat, and we were a bit tempted, as who wouldn't be, by two of the hottest movie stars in the world. But we were clear then and now about wanting only each other. My dream night with Barbie helped me understand that even if it had happened to me, I would never want to do it again. I would feel only shame and regret. So it finally began to sink in that Irina was in the same boat, full of shame at what had happened, guilt for having enjoyed it, and eager to show me that it was only me she wanted. What a fool I had been to take so long to see it. Jason picked me up when I got back to California. I reached home around 5:30 on Friday. I went straight to the bedroom to drop my bags and wash up. And then I found Irina in the kitchen getting ready to start dinner. "I have a question for you," I said as she turned around, gave me a big smile, and came over for a hug. With a straight face, I said, "I wonder if you'd be free to go out to dinner tonight with a fool." Without a smile, just a flicker of humor in her eyes, she replied, "Would this be a fool I know or a new fool? Just the same old fool you know well. What do you think?" Elaine could take over and feed the twins. She looked thoughtful. "Would this fool be taking me to Cash, her favorite restaurant in L.A., so I could wear the beautiful new blue dress he bought me from my birthday, the one that goes so well with the sapphire necklace?" "Yes, indeed," I said. She responded, "Oh, well, then I suppose that would be all right." She turned away, but not before I saw a big smile on her face. It's hard to say what the best part of the evening was. One highlight was watching the people at Cash stare at Irina as we were shown to our table. Some of the men literally had their mouths open. She looked amazing in her royal blue gown that showed off her shoulders, or it might have been Irina's curiosity about what was going on in my mind. It was clear something was up, but I didn't explain, and she held back from asking, maybe sensing it would be more fun that way. Instead, we talked about friends and the twins. I told her about the latest TLI project and how much fun it was to work with Rick. We also tossed around vacation ideas for the summer. I had given Jason the night off, so after dinner I drove us to our favorite scenic spot in Malibu. We sat side by side, her head on my shoulder, enjoying the stars over the ocean, not saying much, just feeling close to each other. When we got home, we quietly checked on the twins and sent Elaine to bed. Then, arm in arm, we walked to our bedroom. Closing the door behind us, I took Irina and kissed her hard, holding her tight in my arms, savoring the feeling of her body against me. I whispered in her ear, "Do you deal with fools?" She chuckled, leaning back to look into my eyes. Not usually, in fact, almost never, but I might make an exception in this case if the fool really wants to. I kissed her again. Trust me, this idiot really wants to. We acted like we weren't in a hurry. We helped each other take off our clothes, hanging my suit and her dress in the closet. We put our shoes, socks, and stockings where they belonged. While doing this, we kept bumping into each other by accident. I really wanted her and could barely breathe. I felt Irina wanted me just as much. When she was completely naked, she smiled and said, "I think I might just go brush my teeth," and started to walk to the bathroom. I couldn't stand it. I grabbed her arm and pulled her to the bed. "Baby, I'm sorry, but I just can't wait." We fell onto the bed together, and I kissed her face and neck, moving my hands over her body. "Oh, sweetheart, I've missed you," she said, holding me close. She was very ready, and I was really eager. In no time, she was beneath me, and I felt wonderful as I entered her. It had been almost 4 months since our last time together. We moved quickly, holding each other tight, my face buried in her neck. I knew I wouldn't last long, but as I felt close to the end, I could tell she was too. We finished together, breathing hard. It was beyond words, silence, calm. We lay there a bit sweaty, hugging, feeling happy. After about half an hour, she propped up on an elbow, smiling sweetly, and kissed me all over my face. That got us going again. We touched and kissed, slowly taking our time. Not a word was spoken. I thought we'd talk that evening, but we were exhausted after. I pulled the sheet over us and we fell asleep almost at once. So it wasn't until the next morning that we talked. We got up full of smiles, dressed and fed Earl and Lily and sent them on a picnic with Elaine. Then we took our coffee out to the patio. We sat close, shoulders touching, and I told her about my dream. She listened, smiling, and when I was done, she said, "So you gotta be with Barbie after all." Sounds like it was pretty steamy, too. I grinned. It was very steamy, very intense, and I woke up and realized I wouldn't want to do it ever again. And that's when I finally understood. I took her hand. "I'm sorry I've been such an idiot. Sorry that I held back when you needed my love and support. I kept thinking about Jamie Breland's superstar and how I could never measure up to him. Are you over that now?" she asked very seriously. "You bet," I said, smiling. "I finally figured out that for whatever reason you prefer plain old me to the world's sexiest man." "Yes, I do," she said. "And if you don't know why you're less smart than I think you are." She stood up and walked around the patio as I watched her, thinking about all our years together. Her scarred face, our lost baby, the joy of Lily and Earl in our lives, her becoming beautiful again. "All right then, how are you going to make it up to me?" She was teasing me, standing with one hip out, arms crossed like a teacher disappointed in a student. "Well," I said, pretending to think, "how about I take you to Cancun for a week, just the two of us?" And she said, keeping her serious look, "And we stay at that fancy hotel we both love, and we eat dinner at the best restaurants and go dancing after. And I take you shopping for some new really nice bikinis and maybe a dress or two." And she started to smile, but tried to hide it. "And I get us a boat to take us out to that little island for a picnic and some swimming. And we make love 4 times a day until I drop dead from a heart attack." "Okay," she said after thinking that sounds pretty good. Hey, audience, if you like this video and want to keep up with more thrilling stories, make sure to subscribe to Prince Cheating Tales and hit the notification bell. You don't want to miss out on our upcoming adventures. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next wonderful story.